Welcome. Take a moment right now to settle into wherever you are. Perhaps you're walking, driving, or sitting quietly. Wherever you find yourself, allow your shoulders to drop just slightly. Feel the weight of your body being supported. Take a slow breath in through your nose, and release it gently through your mouth. This audiobook is not just information to consume. It is an invitation into self-understanding, into the deeper chambers of your own heart and mind. Anger is something we all experience, yet few of us truly understand. And what we don't understand, we cannot master. What we cannot master, masters us. Throughout human history, anger has been both creator and destroyer. It has fueled revolutions and ruined relationships. It has protected the innocent and harmed the vulnerable. Anger, in its essence, is neither good nor evil. It is energy, raw and powerful, waiting to be channeled or waiting to explode. The words you're about to hear are designed to help you develop a new relationship with this primal force within you. Not to suppress it, not to fear it, but to understand it so deeply that you can work with it rather than against it. This is the path of the wise, the path of those who seek to live with intention rather than reaction. Part 1: Anger as a Survival Mechanism. The Ancient Wisdom of Our Bodies. Let us begin at the beginning, in a time before language, before civilization, before the modern world with its endless complexities. Imagine, if you will, one of your ancient ancestors walking through a dense forest thousands of years ago. The sun filters through the canopy above. Birds call to one another. And then, suddenly, a rustling in the bushes. In that fraction of a second, before conscious thought even forms, your ancestor's body has already begun its response. The amygdala, that almond-shaped cluster of neurons deep in the brain, has detected potential danger. It sends an instant signal, bypassing the thinking parts of the brain entirely. Adrenaline floods the bloodstream. The heart rate accelerates. Muscles tense. Blood flow redirects from the digestive system to the limbs. The pupils dilate to take in more information. This is the survival mechanism in action. This is anger's original purpose. To prepare the body for fight or flight, to mobilize every resource for immediate action. In that ancient forest, this response might have meant the difference between life and death. A tiger emerges from the bush, and your ancestor must either fight with every ounce of strength or flee with every ounce of speed. Take another slow breath now. In and out. Notice how even discussing this activates something within you. This is because these neural pathways are still very much alive in your modern brain. Evolution moves slowly, and though your daily threats are no longer tigers and bears, your brain often responds as if they are. The neuroscience of rapid response. Let us go deeper into the mechanism itself. When you experience anger, you are experiencing a cascade of neurochemical events that happen in milliseconds. The amygdala, our ancient alarm system, can process sensory information in about 12 milliseconds. The prefrontal cortex, our center of rational thought, conscious decision-making, and impulse control, requires about 500 milliseconds to fully engage. Do you see the gap? Nearly half a second where your reactive brain is in control before your thinking brain can even arrive at the scene. This is why we so often say things we regret, why we lash out before we think, why we react before we respond. Daniel Goleman, in his work on emotional intelligence, called this phenomenon emotional hijacking or amygdala hijack. It is as if your emotional brain temporarily takes over the control room, pushing the rational mind aside. In that moment, you are not thinking about consequences, about relationships, about your values. You are in pure survival mode. Consider a modern example. You're driving, and someone cuts you off suddenly. Before you consciously realize what's happening, your body has already tensed, your jaw has clenched, perhaps you've gasped or shouted. Only afterward does your thinking brain arrive and begin to narrate, that person is reckless. They could have caused an accident. Who do they think they are? But notice, the anger response came first. The story came second. This is crucial to understand. Your body responds to perceived threats instantaneously. What we call anger is often this survival response triggered by situations that are not actually life-threatening, but which our ancient brain interprets as such. A critical email from your boss is not a predator, but your amygdala may respond as if it is. An argument with your partner is not a physical attack, but your body may prepare for battle nonetheless. The purpose behind the fire. Now, let us not make the mistake of viewing this mechanism as a flaw. It is not. This rapid response system has kept humans alive for hundreds of thousands of years. When true danger appears, you do not have time for lengthy deliberation. You need immediate action. Anger, in its pure form, is the emotion of boundaries. It arises when we perceive that something important to us is being threatened or violated. Our physical safety, yes, but also our psychological safety, our dignity, our values, our loved ones, our sense of justice. Anger says, this is not acceptable. This must change. I must act. In this light, anger is actually trying to protect you. It is an ally, not an enemy. The problem arises not with the anger itself, but with how we've been conditioned to express it or suppress it, and with how frequently our modern lives trigger this ancient alarm system inappropriately. Think about a time when anger served you well. Perhaps someone was treating a person you love with disrespect, and your anger gave you the courage to speak up. Perhaps you witnessed an injustice, and your anger motivated you to take action, to change something that needed changing. Perhaps your anger helped you recognize that a boundary had been crossed in a relationship, alerting you to something that needed to be addressed. This is healthy anger, what we might call clean anger. It is proportional to the situation. It energizes appropriate action. It passes through you without lingering resentment. It protects without destroying. Pause here for a moment. Take a breath and reflect. Can you remember a time when your anger actually helped you? When it pointed you towards something important? The modern mismatch. The challenge we face in the 21st century is this. Our brains are still wired for the savannah, but we live in offices, traffic jams, and social media feeds. Our survival mechanism, beautifully designed for occasional life or death threats, is being triggered dozens of times per day by situations that are frustrating, annoying, or threatening to our ego, but not actually dangerous. The email that feels like an attack. The traffic that makes you late. The political news that enrages you. The social media comment that feels like a personal assault. The family member who pushes your buttons. The coworker who takes credit for your work. Each of these can trigger that same ancient cascade: danger detected, mobilize for battle. But here's the problem. In most of these situations, the physical fight or flight response is completely inappropriate. You cannot physically fight your boss or flee your job every time you're frustrated. You cannot attack everyone who disagrees with you online. And so the energy builds, the adrenaline and cortisol flood your system with nowhere to go, and you're left with a body prepared for battle but a situation that requires restraint, patience, or diplomacy. This is the modern predicament of anger. We are experiencing a survival response to situations that don't require survival. And the more frequently this happens, the more our nervous system gets stuck in a state of chronic activation, always on alert, always ready to react. Breathe with me now. In through the nose for a count of 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold for a count of 4, 1, 2, 3, 4. Out through the mouth for a count of 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This extended exhale activates your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system that counterbalances the fight or flight response. Do this 3 times whenever you feel anger beginning to rise. Part 2: Why we react before we think. The architecture of reaction. Let us now explore more deeply this gap between reaction and response, between impulse and intention. The ancient Greek philosopher Epictetus taught that between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. But as we've discussed, that space is often vanishingly small, measured in milliseconds, not minutes. So how do we expand it? How do we create room for choice in the heat of the moment? First, we must understand what fills that space currently. When you react without thinking, you are operating from what psychologists call implicit memory or procedural memory. These are patterns learned so deeply they become automatic, like riding a bicycle or typing on a keyboard. You don't think about how to do these things, you just do them. Emotional reactions work the same way. If you grew up in a household where anger was expressed through yelling, you likely learned that pattern. It became encoded in your neural pathways: threat detected, raise voice, dominate space. You don't decide to yell, the pattern simply activates. If you grew up in a household where anger was dangerous and had to be hidden, you likely learned to suppress, to freeze, to withdraw. Again, you don't choose this response consciously, it chooses you. These patterns were adaptive once. They helped you survive your childhood environment. But they may no longer serve you in your adult life. The first step in change is recognition. You must become aware of your default patterns. The triggers and templates. Each of us carries within us a unique landscape of triggers, those specific situations, words, or circumstances that reliably activate our anger response. These triggers are not random. They are connected to our deepest wounds, our unmet needs, our core fears. For one person, feeling disrespected is the primary trigger. For another, it's feeling controlled or having their freedom limited. For another, it's injustice or unfairness. For another, it's feeling dismissed or not taken seriously. For yet another, it's feeling abandoned or excluded. These triggers point back to what psychologists call our core needs: the need for respect, autonomy, fairness, significance, belonging, safety. When these needs are threatened, our survival brain activates, even though our modern threats are psychological rather than physical. Consider this carefully in your own life. What situations reliably trigger your anger? Can you identify the pattern beneath the pattern? What need feels threatened in those moments? Let me share with you a story. There was once a man named Robert who would become intensely angry whenever he felt his intelligence was being questioned. In meetings at work, if someone challenged his ideas or suggested he might be wrong about something, he would become defensive and argumentative. His face would flush. His voice would rise. He would sometimes say cutting, sarcastic things that damaged his relationships with colleagues. Through reflection and therapy, Robert discovered that this pattern traced back to his childhood. His father had frequently criticized him, calling him stupid, mocking his mistakes. As a young boy, Robert learned that being wrong meant being worthless. His adult anger was actually his inner child's desperate attempt to prove his value, to say, "I am intelligent. I do matter." Once Robert understood this, everything changed. He could recognize the feeling when it arose. Ah, there's that old wound. Someone is disagreeing with me, and my ancient alarm is going off. With awareness, he could pause, breathe, and remind himself, I am not a child anymore. My worth is not dependent on being right. This person disagreeing with me is not my father. I can listen. I can be curious. I can even change my mind. This is the power of understanding your triggers. They lose their unconscious control over you. The physiology of reaction. Let us return to the body, for the body is where reaction lives. When anger arises, it is first and foremost a physical experience. The thinking, the story-making, the justification, all of that comes afterward. But in the beginning, there is just sensation. Your heart rate increases, perhaps from 70 beats per minute to 120 or more. Your breathing becomes rapid and shallow, moving from deep belly breathing to quick chest breathing. Your muscles tense, particularly in your jaw, shoulders, and hands. Your temperature rises. You may feel heat in your face, your chest, your arms. Some people experience a feeling of pressure, like something building up inside them. Others feel a kind of electric energy, jumpy and agitated. These physical sensations are not incidental to anger. They are anger, at least in its initial form. The psychological experience, the cognitive content, the thoughts and stories, these are secondary elaborations. This is why working directly with the body is so powerful. You cannot think your way out of an amygdala hijack while it's happening. The thinking brain is offline. But you can breathe your way through it. You can move your way through it. You can ground yourself in physical sensation. Here is a practice to try. The next time you feel anger beginning to arise, before you say anything or take any action, do this: place one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly. Feel your breath moving under your hands. This simple gesture activates your parasympathetic nervous system and helps you shift from reaction to response. It creates a moment of pause, a gap between the trigger and your action. Now breathe slowly and deeply, extending the exhale. As you breathe, name what you're feeling in your body without judgment. My chest is tight. My jaw is clenched. My heart is racing. This practice, called noting or labeling, engages your prefrontal cortex, which helps calm the amygdala. You're essentially bringing your thinking brain back online. The stories we tell. Once the initial physiological response has occurred, your mind begins to construct a narrative, a story to explain and justify what you're feeling. This happens almost instantaneously, but it is still secondary to the physical response. These stories follow predictable patterns: he disrespected me. She always does this. They never listen. This is unfair. I can't believe this is happening. They should know better. This is unacceptable. Notice the language. Notice the absolutes: always, never. Notice the judgments: should, unfair, unacceptable. Notice the focus on others' actions rather than your own response. These stories are not neutral observations. They are interpretations, and they pour fuel on the fire of your anger. Each thought of "this is unfair" or "he always does this" triggers another wave of anger, another release of stress hormones, another tightening of muscles. The Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron teaches about what she calls the storyline, the narrative we construct around our emotions. She suggests that we get hooked not by the situation itself, but by our story about the situation. Two people can experience the exact same event, but based on their different stories, one becomes enraged while the other remains calm. Imagine two people stuck in traffic. Person A thinks, "This is terrible. I'm going to be late. People will think I'm irresponsible. My whole day is ruined. Why does this always happen to me?" This person's anger escalates with each thought. Person B thinks, "Traffic is heavy. I can't control this. I'll let people know I'm running late. I can use this time to listen to music or practice breathing." This person remains relatively calm. Same situation, different stories, vastly different emotional experiences. The practice here is to become aware of your stories without immediately believing them. When anger arises, can you notice the narrative your mind is spinning? Can you hold it lightly, with curiosity rather than certainty? This doesn't mean your story is wrong. It means you're creating space around it. You're saying, "This is one interpretation. What else might be true?" This small shift, this tiny bit of perspective, can completely transform your experience. Part 3: The Cost of Uncontrolled Anger. The Toll on Body and Mind. Now we must turn to something more difficult, but essential. We must examine honestly what uncontrolled anger costs us. Not to shame or criticize, but to motivate change. Because until you fully understand what your reactive anger is costing you, you will not commit to the work of transformation. Let us start with the body. Chronic anger, anger that is frequently triggered and poorly managed, is associated with numerous health problems. Cardiovascular disease, 4-1. Each time you experience intense anger, your blood pressure spikes, your heart races, stress hormones flood your system. If this happens regularly, you're essentially giving your cardiovascular system a workout it wasn't designed for. Studies have shown that people who experience frequent intense anger have significantly higher rates of heart attack and stroke. Anger also suppresses your immune system. The stress hormones released during anger, cortisol and adrenaline, are helpful in short bursts but damaging when chronically elevated. They interfere with immune function, making you more susceptible to illness and infection. Digestive problems are common in people with chronic anger. Remember, during the fight or flight response, blood flow is diverted away from the digestive system. Chronic anger means chronic digestive disturbance, leading to issues like irritable bowel syndrome, ulcers, and chronic inflammation. Sleep disturbance is another cost. How many times have you lain awake at night, replaying an argument, imagining what you should have said, feeling your body tense and your mind race? Anger and resentment keep your nervous system activated when it should be resting. Poor sleep then makes you more irritable, more prone to anger the next day, creating a vicious cycle. Take a breath here. Check in with your body. How is it responding to this information? There's no need to feel guilty or anxious. Awareness itself is the beginning of healing. The relational wreckage. Perhaps even more costly than the physical toll is the relational damage that uncontrolled anger creates. Think about your most important relationships. Your partner, your children, your closest friends, your colleagues. How has anger affected these connections? When we react in anger, we often say things we don't mean, things designed to hurt, to defend, to win. In that moment, we're not thinking about the person we love. We're thinking about protecting ourselves, proving ourselves right, making them understand how wrong they are. But words cannot be taken back. Actions cannot be undone. A child who is regularly subjected to a parent's uncontrolled anger learns that the world is unsafe, that love is conditional, that they must walk on eggshells. A partner who must endure frequent outbursts learns to withdraw, to stop sharing vulnerably, to protect themselves emotionally. Colleagues learn to avoid you, to leave you out of important conversations, to see you as unstable or difficult. Anger creates distance. In the moment, it may feel powerful, but over time it isolates you from the very people whose connection you need most. Let me share another story. There was a woman named Sarah who had a pattern of explosive anger with her teenage daughter. Small things, minor infractions, or normal teenage behaviors would trigger intense reactions. Sarah would yell, criticize harshly, sometimes say cruel things she didn't mean. Afterward, she always felt terrible, would apologize, would promise to do better. But the pattern continued. And slowly, imperceptibly, her daughter began to shut down around her. She stopped sharing about her life. She stopped asking for advice. She spent more time in her room, more time with friends, less time with her mother. By the time Sarah recognized what was happening, a wall had been built between them. The tragedy is that Sarah loved her daughter deeply. Her anger wasn't about not caring, it was about caring too much and not knowing how to manage her own reactivity, her own anxiety, her own triggered memories from her own difficult adolescence. Through counseling and committed practice, Sarah learned to recognize when she was becoming activated. She learned to pause, to breathe, to say, "I need a minute before we discuss this." She learned to repair more effectively after her missteps. And slowly, carefully, she and her daughter began to rebuild their connection. But years were lost, trust was damaged, and Sarah carries the weight of knowing her uncontrolled anger hurt the person she loved most in the world. This is not to induce guilt in you if you recognize yourself in Sarah's story. It is to help you see clearly what's at stake. Your relationships are precious. They are the source of your deepest joy and meaning. Don't let unconscious patterns of reactivity destroy them. The inner costs. Beyond body and relationships, there are inner costs to chronic anger. Your sense of yourself, your self-respect, your inner peace. Each time you react in anger in a way that violates your own values, you experience a kind of inner fracture. You know you're capable of better. You know this isn't who you want to be. And yet, in the moment, the pattern takes over. Afterward, you're left with shame, self-criticism, discouragement. Over time, this erodes self-trust. You begin to fear yourself, to worry about what you might say or do when triggered. This creates a background anxiety, a tension between who you are and who you want to be. There's also the cost of missed opportunities. How many conversations have been derailed by anger? How many problems have remained unsolved because anger took over before real communication could happen? How many creative ideas have been shut down because someone reacted defensively instead of staying open and curious? Anger narrows your perspective. It makes you rigid, certain, closed. All of your mental resources go into defending your position or attacking the perceived threat. There's no room left for creativity, for nuance, for learning, for connection. And then there's the simple cost of suffering. Anger doesn't feel good, despite what some might think. It's agitation, tension, stress. Even when it feels justified, even when you're right, the experience itself is uncomfortable. Your body is flooded with stress chemicals. Your mind is obsessive and repetitive. Your emotional state is jagged and harsh. People who live with chronic anger often describe feeling exhausted, burned out, depleted. Because anger is energetically expensive. It consumes enormous resources, physical and psychological. The path forward. I share all of this not to overwhelm you, but to help you see clearly. Because seeing clearly is the first step toward change. You cannot address a problem you don't fully acknowledge. If you're listening to this, it's because some part of you knows that your relationship with anger needs to change. Honor that knowing. Trust it. It's your deepest wisdom speaking. The good news, the hopeful news, is that change is absolutely possible. Your brain is neuroplastic, meaning it can form new patterns. Your nervous system can be regulated and trained. Your default reactions can be transformed into conscious responses. But it requires commitment. It requires practice. It requires compassion for yourself through the inevitable stumbles and setbacks. It requires patience, because you're not just changing a behavior, you're rewiring neural pathways that have been carved over years or decades. This audiobook is just the beginning of that journey. Understanding anger is the necessary foundation. From here, you'll need to build skills: mindfulness, emotional regulation, communication, self-compassion, and more. You'll need to practice these skills not just when you're calm, but especially when you're triggered. You'll need support, whether from loved ones, a therapist, a support group, or spiritual community. But know this: every moment of pause you create, every breath you take instead of reacting, every time you choose response over reaction, you are building new pathways. You are becoming someone new. You are freeing yourself from old patterns and stepping into greater mastery. Closing reflection. Take a deep breath with me now. Let's breathe together. In through the nose, slowly, and out through the mouth, even more slowly. Feel your body settling, feel the ground or chair beneath you supporting your weight. You've taken an important step today simply by listening, by choosing to understand rather than continuing unconsciously. This matters. This is how change begins. As you move forward into your day, into your life, carry with you this understanding: anger is not your enemy. It is a messenger, a signal, an energy that can be channeled. Your work is not to eliminate anger, but to develop a new relationship with it. To create space between trigger and reaction. To respond with wisdom rather than reacting from wounds. Be patient with yourself. Be compassionate. You're doing deep work, work that most people avoid their entire lives. There will be moments you succeed and moments you fall back into old patterns. Both are part of the journey. And remember, beneath the anger, beneath the reactivity, beneath the survival patterns, there is you. Whole, complete, deserving of peace and connection. The work of mastering anger is ultimately the work of returning to yourself, to your deepest values, to the person you know you can be. Thank you for listening. Thank you for being here. Thank you for committing to this journey of transformation. May you find peace. May you find freedom. May you discover the vast space between stimulus and response, where your true power resides. Chapter 1: The Psychology Behind Your Triggers. Let us take a moment to settle in together. Wherever you are right now, allow your body to find a comfortable position. Feel the weight of your shoulders dropping slightly. Notice your breath, just as it is, without trying to change it. Simply observe the natural rhythm of air moving in and out. In this chapter, we're going to explore something deeply personal and profoundly powerful: your triggers. These are the invisible tripwires scattered throughout your inner landscape, the hidden buttons that, when pressed, can instantly flood you with anger, frustration, or rage. Understanding your triggers is perhaps the most important work you can do in mastering anger. Because once you understand what activates you and why, you gain the power to respond differently. You move from being controlled by unconscious patterns to making conscious choices. Take a slow breath with me. In through the nose, and out through the mouth. Let's begin. Part 1: What triggers really are. The anatomy of activation. A trigger, in the simplest terms, is any stimulus that activates a strong emotional response in you, particularly one that feels disproportionate to the actual situation. It's the tone of voice that makes your blood boil. The facial expression that fills you with rage. The phrase that makes you want to lash out. The situation that instantly transports you to a state of intense reactivity. But here's what most people don't understand: a trigger is not really about the present moment. It's about the past. Imagine your psyche as a vast library. Every experience you've ever had, especially from childhood, has been filed away somewhere in this library. Most of these memories are stored implicitly, meaning they affect you without your conscious awareness. When something in your present life resembles something from your past, especially something painful or threatening, your brain instantly retrieves that old file and responds based on the old data. This happens in milliseconds, far faster than conscious thought. Your amygdala, that ancient alarm center in your brain, is constantly scanning your environment for threats. It compares what's happening now to what happened before. When it detects a match with a past threat or wound, it sounds the alarm. Your body mobilizes for danger. And you experience this as being triggered. Let me give you an example. Imagine a woman named Jennifer. She's in a meeting at work, presenting an idea. Her colleague Michael interrupts her mid-sentence to offer his own suggestion. Jennifer immediately feels a wave of intense anger. Her face flushes. Her jaw clenches. She snaps at Michael in a way that surprises even her. On the surface, this seems like an overreaction to a simple interruption. But Jennifer's trigger isn't really about Michael. When she was growing up, she had an older brother who constantly talked over her, dismissed her ideas, and took credit for her thoughts. Her parents never intervened. She learned that her voice didn't matter, that she had to fight to be heard. So when Michael interrupts her, Jennifer's brain doesn't just register a workplace interruption. It registers, my voice is being stolen again. I'm being made invisible again. I must fight to exist. The emotional intensity isn't about this moment, it's about thousands of moments from her past, all compressed into this single trigger point. This is the nature of triggers. They are bridges between past and present, carrying old pain into new situations. The protective function. Now, before we go further, let's understand something important: triggers exist to protect you. They are not defects or weaknesses. Your brain, in its wisdom, is trying to keep you safe from experiencing old pain again. If you were betrayed in the past, your brain becomes vigilant for any sign of betrayal now. If you were abandoned, you become sensitive to rejection. If you were criticized, you become reactive to anything that feels like disapproval. Your triggers are your psyche's early warning system, trying to help you avoid being hurt again. The problem is that this system is oversensitive and often inaccurate. It confuses similarity with sameness. Just because someone disagrees with you doesn't mean they're attacking you the way your father did. Just because someone seems distant doesn't mean they're abandoning you like your ex-partner did. But your triggered brain doesn't make these distinctions. It just sounds the alarm. Understanding this protective function can help you develop compassion for your own reactivity. You're not broken. Your system is doing exactly what it was designed to do, based on the information it has. Your work now is to update that information, to teach your nervous system that you're safe, that the past is past, that you have more options now than you did then. Breathe with me here. Place one hand on your heart. Feel the warmth of your own touch. This is the gesture of self-compassion, of befriending yourself even as you explore difficult territory. The specificity of triggers. One of the most fascinating aspects of triggers is how specific they can be. It's not just criticism that triggers you, it might be criticism delivered in a certain tone of voice, by a certain type of person, in a certain context. It's not just rejection, it might be a particular kind of silence, a specific facial expression, a certain phrase. This specificity comes from how memory works. Your brain doesn't just store the general concept of a painful experience. It stores the sensory details, the tone of voice, the look on someone's face, the time of day, the smell in the room, the feeling in your body. Any of these details can later serve as a trigger, reactivating the whole memory network. Consider a man named David. He has an intense trigger around being asked, "Are you okay?" When his partner asks this question with a certain concerned tone, David becomes instantly irritated and defensive. To his partner, this seems bizarre. She's expressing care, and he's responding with anger. But David's mother struggled with severe anxiety. Growing up, she would constantly ask him, "Are you okay? Are you sure you're okay?" with an anxious, worried tone. As a child, David learned that his mother's question wasn't really about him, it was about her need for reassurance. He felt responsible for managing her anxiety. He felt smothered, controlled, never allowed to just be. So now, when his partner asks, "Are you okay?" in that same concerned tone, David's system reacts to the implicit message it learned in childhood: "You need to take care of my emotional needs. Your feelings exist to serve mine." He's not responding to his partner's genuine care, he's responding to a ghost from his past. This level of specificity means that two people can have very different triggers around seemingly similar situations. One person might be triggered by loud voices but not silence. Another might be triggered by silence but not loud voices. One might react to being told what to do, while another might react to not being given clear direction. Your triggers are as unique as your fingerprint, shaped by your particular history, your particular wounds, your particular unmet needs. The layers of meaning. Triggers operate on multiple levels simultaneously. There's the surface level, the obvious content: someone criticized you, someone ignored you, someone broke a promise. Then there are the deeper levels, the meanings you assign to these events. Psychologists call these deeper layers core beliefs or schemas. These are your fundamental assumptions about yourself, others, and the world, formed in early childhood and reinforced over time. When a trigger activates, it's often because a core belief has been touched. Common core beliefs that underlie triggers include: I am not good enough. I am not safe. I cannot trust others. I must be perfect to be loved. My needs don't matter. I will be abandoned. I am powerless. When something in your present life seems to confirm one of these deep beliefs, the trigger response is intense because it feels like proof of something you fear most about yourself or the world. Let's say you have a core belief that I am not important. This might have formed because your parents were preoccupied, distracted, or emotionally unavailable. You learned that your needs didn't really matter, that you had to fight for attention, that you were fundamentally forgettable. Now, as an adult, when your partner forgets something you told them or doesn't prioritize something important to you, this doesn't just register as a simple mistake. It registers as confirmation: see? I don't matter. I'm not important. I never have been and never will be. The emotional intensity of your anger is proportional not to the actual event, but to the deep belief it seems to prove. This is why triggers can feel so overwhelming. You're not just angry about this moment. You're angry about every moment this core belief has been reinforced, every time you felt invisible, unimportant, or forgotten. All of that pain comes flooding forward. Take a moment here to breathe. Notice if this discussion is activating anything in you. If so, that's valuable information. Your system is showing you where your work is. Be gentle with yourself. Part 2: Emotional Conditioning from Childhood. The Formative Years. Let us now travel back to the beginning, to your earliest years. This is where the foundation of your trigger patterns was laid, in the crucible of childhood, when your brain was most plastic, most impressionable, most vulnerable to what psychologists call emotional conditioning. Emotional conditioning is the process by which you learn to associate certain situations with certain feelings and responses. It happens through repetition, through the emotional environment you grew up in, through what was modeled for you, through what was rewarded or punished. A child's brain is like wet cement, soft and shapeable. Every interaction, every emotional exchange, every repeated pattern leaves an impression. Over time, these impressions harden into your default ways of perceiving and responding to the world. If you grew up in a home where anger was expressed through yelling and violence, your nervous system learned, anger is dangerous. When conflict arises, I must either fight back aggressively or shut down completely. This becomes your template, your automatic response pattern. If you grew up in a home where emotions were suppressed and never discussed, you learned, feelings are shameful. They should be hidden. I'm on my own with whatever I'm experiencing. This, too, becomes a template. Anger arises and you automatically swallow it, disconnect from it, pretend it doesn't exist. If you grew up in a home where your anger was met with punishment or rejection, you learned, my anger is bad. It makes me unlovable. I must never show it. And so you develop sophisticated defenses against your own anger, perhaps turning it inward into depression or self-criticism, perhaps expressing it indirectly through passive-aggressive behavior. These aren't conscious choices. They're adaptations, survival strategies you developed to navigate your early environment. And they made perfect sense in that context. The problem is that they continue to operate in your adult life, even when the context has completely changed. The role of attachment. The most profound emotional conditioning occurs in your attachment relationships, primarily with your parents or primary caregivers. Attachment theory, developed by psychologist John Bowlby and researcher Mary Ainsworth, shows that the quality of these early bonds shapes your emotional template for all future relationships. If your caregivers were consistently responsive, attuned, and emotionally available, you likely developed what's called secure attachment. This means you learned that your emotions are valid, that expressing them brings connection rather than rejection, that others can be trusted to care about your inner world. People with secure attachment tend to have fewer intense triggers around closeness and conflict. But if your early attachment was inconsistent, dismissive, or frightening, you likely developed an insecure attachment pattern. This creates a host of triggers around intimacy, dependence, and emotional expression. Those with anxious attachment, formed when caregivers were inconsistently available, often have triggers around abandonment and rejection. They become hypervigilant to any sign of withdrawal, any hint that someone is pulling away. A delayed text message, a cancelled plan, a moment of distance can trigger intense anxiety and anger because it activates that old fear, they're going to leave me, just like I always knew they would. Those with avoidant attachment, formed when caregivers were dismissive or rejecting of emotional needs, often have triggers around closeness and vulnerability. When someone wants to discuss feelings or asks for emotional intimacy, they feel smothered, controlled, or trapped. Their anger arises as a defense, pushing the other person away to recreate the emotional distance that feels safer. Understanding your attachment pattern doesn't excuse reactive behavior, but it does explain it. It helps you see that your triggers aren't random or irrational. They're rooted in your earliest experiences of connection and safety. There's a beautiful exercise you can do here. Close your eyes for a moment if you're in a safe place to do so. Think back to your childhood home. What was the emotional atmosphere? When you were upset or angry as a child, what happened? Were you comforted? Punished? Ignored? How did the adults around you handle their own anger? What did you learn, implicitly, about what anger meant and how it should be expressed or suppressed? These memories hold important information about your present-day triggers. The power of implicit learning. Much of childhood emotional conditioning happens implicitly, meaning without language or conscious awareness. Before you could even speak, your nervous system was learning patterns, encoding rules about safety and danger, connection and rejection. A baby whose cries are consistently met with soothing learns, the world responds to my needs. I can signal distress and help will come. I am safe. Their nervous system develops a baseline of security. A baby whose cries are ignored or met with harshness learns, the world is unpredictable or hostile. My needs don't matter. I must remain hypervigilant. their nervous system develops a baseline of anxiety or hyperarousal. These preverbal patterns are stored in what neuroscientists call implicit memory, which is different from explicit memory. Explicit memories are things you consciously remember. I remember my 8th birthday party. Implicit memories are patterns and feelings that affect you without conscious awareness. I feel anxious when people are late, but I'm not sure why. Many of your deepest triggers are rooted in this implicit memory system. You don't remember specific events, but your body remembers the feelings, the patterns, the perceived threats. This is why triggers can feel so mysterious, why you might say, I don't know why I react this way. It doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to your conscious mind because the origin is stored in a part of your brain that doesn't use logic or language. It only knows sensation and pattern. The good news is that implicit patterns can be changed, but not through thinking or analyzing alone. They change through new experiences, through repeatedly giving your nervous system evidence that the old pattern is no longer true. This is why therapy, meditation, and somatic practices are so powerful. They work directly with the nervous system, not just the thinking mind. Intergenerational transmission. One more layer to understand: your emotional conditioning didn't start with you. It started generations before, passed down through family patterns of trauma, coping, and relationship. If your grandmother lived through war or severe poverty, she likely developed patterns of hypervigilance and emotional guardedness to survive. She then raised your parent in this atmosphere. Your parent, even if they never experienced war themselves, absorbed these patterns and passed them to you. This is called intergenerational trauma. Similarly, patterns of anger expression often run in families. If your father learned from his father that anger means dominance, loud voice, and intimidation, and you grew up watching this, you likely absorbed the same pattern, even if you consciously reject it. Breaking these intergenerational patterns is profound work. When you choose to understand your triggers and respond differently, you're not just healing yourself. You're healing your lineage and preventing these patterns from passing to the next generation. Take a deep breath. This is heavy territory. You're doing important work simply by staying present with this exploration. Part 3: Identifying Hidden Trigger Patterns. The practice of self-observation. Now we move from understanding to application. How do you actually identify your personal trigger patterns, especially the hidden ones that operate beneath conscious awareness? The answer is through consistent, compassionate self-observation. This means developing what Buddhists call mindful awareness, or what psychologists call metacognition, the ability to observe your own mind and emotions from a slight distance, with curiosity rather than judgment. Think of yourself as a friendly scientist studying a fascinating subject, you. Your job is not to criticize or fix, but simply to notice and understand. Start with the triggers that are already obvious. These are the situations where you know you reliably become angry or reactive. Write them down. Be specific. Not just when someone disrespects me, but when my boss uses that dismissive tone in meetings or when my partner checks their phone while I'm talking. For each obvious trigger, ask yourself: what exactly is happening in this moment? What am I feeling in my body? What thoughts or beliefs are arising? What does this situation remind me of from my past? What need or value of mine feels threatened? This last question is crucial. Underneath every trigger is a need or value that feels violated: the need for respect, safety, autonomy, fairness, belonging, or significance. When you can identify the need beneath the trigger, you gain profound insight. The body is guide. Your body is your most reliable guide to hidden triggers. Often, your body knows you're triggered before your conscious mind does. Learning to read your body's signals is essential. Different people have different somatic signatures for triggers. Some feel heat rising in their chest or face. Some feel tension in their jaw, shoulders, or fists. Some feel a kind of electric energy, jittery and agitated. Some feel a sinking sensation, a heaviness, or numbness. Some feel their heart racing or their breath becoming shallow. Begin to notice. What are your body's early warning signals? What physical sensations arise in the seconds before you become fully triggered? Here's a practice: For 1 week, set a gentle alarm on your phone 3 times a day. When it goes off, pause and do a body scan. Starting from your head and moving down to your feet, notice, where am I holding tension? What's the quality of my breath? What's my energy level? Am I calm or activated? This practice trains you to check in with your body regularly, so you become more sensitive to the subtle shifts that indicate a trigger is being activated. The earlier you can catch the trigger, the more power you have to respond skillfully rather than react unconsciously. Pattern recognition through journaling. One of the most powerful tools for identifying hidden patterns is a trigger journal. After any situation where you felt intensely angry or reactive, take a few minutes to write about it. Use this structure. Situation: what happened? Be factual and specific. Thoughts: what was I thinking? What story was my mind telling? Feelings: what emotions arose? What sensations in my body? Response: what did I do or say? Reflection: does this remind me of anything from my past? What need felt threatened? What would I do differently next time? Do this consistently for a month, and patterns will emerge. You'll notice that your triggers aren't as random as they seemed. The same themes appear again and again: feeling controlled, feeling dismissed, feeling incompetent, feeling excluded, feeling betrayed. These recurring themes point directly to your core wounds and unmet needs. They show you where your healing work is. The hidden triggers. Some triggers are obvious: someone yells at you, someone betrays you, someone treats you unfairly. But many triggers are subtler, hidden in the background of your life, creating chronic low-level activation that makes you more prone to reactive anger. Hidden triggers might include chronic stress or overwork depleting your nervous system, lack of sleep making you emotionally fragile, physical pain or illness taxing your resources, unresolved grief or loss weighing on you, environments that unconsciously remind you of past trauma, particular times of year or anniversaries of difficult events, substances like caffeine or alcohol affecting your nervous system. These hidden triggers don't cause anger directly, but they lower your threshold. They make you more vulnerable to activation. It's like walking around with a full glass of water: the slightest bump and it spills over. Pay attention to patterns. Do you notice you're more triggered at certain times of day? Certain days of the week? When you're hungry or tired? After talking to certain people? In certain environments? These contextual factors matter enormously. The practice of naming. There's profound power in naming your triggers. When you can name something, you gain a degree of mastery over it. It's no longer a mysterious force that overtakes you, it's a known pattern you can work with. Consider creating a personal trigger map. On a piece of paper, write down your main triggers. For each one, note the typical situation or stimulus, the body sensations that arise, the core belief or fear underneath, the unmet need, the childhood origin if you know it. This map becomes a tool for self-understanding and self-compassion. When you're triggered, you can reference it: this is my not being heard trigger. My chest is tight, my jaw is clenched. The old belief my voice doesn't matter is activating. What I really need is to feel significant and respected. Just this act of naming and understanding often creates enough space that you don't have to react unconsciously. You can pause, breathe, and choose a response that honors your need without harming your relationships. Moving forward with compassion. As we close this chapter, I want to leave you with this: understanding your triggers is an act of profound self-compassion. You're not doing this to judge yourself or to prove how damaged you are. You're doing this to free yourself, to reclaim your power, to step out of unconscious patterns into conscious choice. Every trigger you identify is a doorway to healing. Every pattern you name is a pattern you can change. The work is not easy, but it is worthy. You are worthy. Take a final deep breath with me. In through the nose, out through the mouth. Feel yourself grounded, present, held. In our next chapter, we'll explore how to work with these triggers skillfully, how to regulate your nervous system in moments of activation, how to create new patterns of response. For now, simply rest in this new understanding. You're not broken. You're human, carrying the weight of your history, doing your best to navigate a complex world. And with awareness, patience, and practice, you can transform your relationship with anger from unconscious reaction to conscious mastery. Thank you for your courage in this exploration. Until we meet again. Chapter 2: How to Create Space Between Trigger and Reaction. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, allow yourself to simply be present. Feel your feet on the ground, or if you're sitting, feel the chair supporting you. Notice the rhythm of your breath, the gentle rise and fall of your chest. In this chapter, we're going to explore what might be the most transformative skill you can develop in your relationship with anger. The ability to pause. To create space between what happens to you and how you respond. This small gap, sometimes lasting only a few seconds, contains within it the power to change everything. The ancient Stoic philosopher Epictetus taught that between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom. Today, we learn how to find that space, expand it, and use it wisely. Take a deep breath with me. Inhale slowly through your nose, hold for just a moment, and release gently through your mouth. Let's begin. Part 1: The Pause Technique. Understanding the gap. Right now, in your current relationship with anger, what happens when you're triggered? Most likely, the sequence goes something like this: trigger occurs. Body reacts. Emotion floods. Action happens. All of this unfolds in seconds, maybe even less than a second. You're triggered, and before you know it, you've said something harsh, slammed a door, sent an angry text, or withdrawn completely. This is the hijack sequence. Your reactive brain takes control, and your conscious, wise mind gets pushed aside. There's no gap, no space, no pause. Just trigger and immediate reaction. The pause technique is about inserting a gap into the sequence. It's about creating a moment of conscious awareness between the trigger and your response. This isn't about suppressing your anger or pretending you're not upset. It's about giving yourself time to respond skillfully rather than react destructively. Think of it like this: imagine you're driving and suddenly a deer jumps into the road. You have two options. You can slam on the brakes in panic, potentially causing an accident. Or you can brake firmly but smoothly, maintaining control. Both responses address the danger, but one is reactive and potentially harmful, while the other is responsive and protective. The pause technique teaches you the latter. It doesn't eliminate the deer or the danger. It helps you maintain control in your response. The physiological foundation. To understand why the pause works, we need to understand what's happening in your body and brain during a trigger moment. When you're triggered, your amygdala, that ancient alarm center, sends a signal that floods your body with stress hormones, adrenaline and cortisol. Your heart rate increases, your breathing becomes shallow, your muscles tense, and blood flow redirects from your prefrontal cortex, the thinking part of your brain, to your limbs, preparing you for fight or flight. This entire cascade happens in milliseconds. But here's the crucial insight: this cascade has a peak and then a natural decline. The stress hormones don't remain elevated forever. They surge, and then, if you don't keep re-triggering yourself with angry thoughts, they begin to dissipate. This typically takes about 90 seconds to 2 minutes. Neuroscientist Jill Bolte Taylor, in her book My Stroke of Insight, explains that the physiological lifespan of an emotion in the body is 90 seconds. After that, you're actually choosing to keep the emotion alive through your thoughts and focus. The pause technique leverages this biological reality. By pausing, by not acting immediately, you're giving your body time to process the initial surge. You're waiting for your prefrontal cortex to come back online so you can think clearly. You're allowing the intensity to naturally decrease before you respond. This is not about waiting until you're completely calm, which might take much longer. It's about waiting until you move from the peak of reactivity to a place where you can access some degree of choice and wisdom. The basic pause practice. So how do you actually do this? How do you create a pause when your entire system is screaming at you to act immediately? The answer is through a simple, repeatable technique that you practice until it becomes automatic. Here's the basic structure. Step 1. Notice the trigger. The moment you feel that surge of anger, that physical activation, that impulse to react, you must first notice it. This requires the self-awareness we've been developing. Your body gives you signals: heat, tension, rapid heartbeat, clenched jaw. Learn to recognize these as your cue: I'm being triggered right now. Step 2. Pause physically. This is the most important step. Stop whatever you're doing. If you're about to speak, close your mouth. If you're about to type, take your hands off the keyboard. If you're moving towards someone, stop moving. This physical pause interrupts the automatic reaction pattern. Step 3. Breathe intentionally. Take one slow, deep breath. Inhale through your nose for a count of 4. Hold for a count of 4. Exhale through your mouth for a count of 6. This extended exhale activates your parasympathetic nervous system, the calming system that counterbalances fight or flight. Step 4. Ground yourself. Feel your feet on the floor. Notice 3 things you can see around you. This brings you into the present moment and out of the triggered state, which is actually a state of being hijacked by the past. Step 5. Name what's happening. Silently, to yourself, name the experience: I'm feeling triggered. I'm angry. My body is activated. This simple act of naming engages your prefrontal cortex and begins to calm your amygdala. Neuroscientists call this affect labeling, and research shows it significantly reduces emotional intensity. Step 6. Choose your response. Now, from this slightly calmer place, ask yourself, what do I actually want here? What response would honor my values? What would my wisest self do right now? Then respond from that place. This entire sequence can take as little as 10 to 15 seconds. But those seconds change everything. Practical applications. Let's explore how this looks in real situations. Imagine you're in a meeting, and a colleague dismisses your idea in a condescending tone. You feel that familiar surge of anger. Your jaw clenches. You're about to fire back a sarcastic comment. Instead, you pause. You notice the trigger. You close your mouth. You take one slow breath. You feel your feet on the floor. You silently name, I'm angry. I feel dismissed. Then you choose. I want to be heard, but I also want to maintain my professionalism in this working relationship. From that place, you might say calmly, I'd like to explain my reasoning more fully. I think there's value here worth considering. Or you might decide that this isn't the right moment, and you make a mental note to address it later privately. Either way, you've responded rather than reacted. You've maintained your dignity and your relationships. Or imagine you're at home, and your teenager speaks to you disrespectfully. Your immediate impulse is to yell, to assert your authority, to make them feel as hurt as you feel. Instead, you pause. You notice the heat rising in your chest. You stop yourself from speaking. You breathe. You feel the floor beneath you. You name it, I'm hurt. I'm angry. I feel disrespected. Then you choose. Maybe you say, I need a moment before we continue this conversation. What you just said was hurtful, and I want to respond thoughtfully, not angrily. This models emotional regulation for your child. It maintains the boundary without damaging the relationship. It shows strength, not weakness. The pause doesn't mean you don't address the situation. It means you address it skillfully. Building the pause muscle. Like any skill, the pause technique requires practice. You can't wait until you're in the heat of a trigger to try it for the first time. You need to train in calmer moments so the skill is available when you need it most. Here's a daily practice: several times throughout your day, practice the pause sequence even when you're not triggered. When you're washing dishes, pause and take 3 intentional breaths. When you're walking, pause and name 3 things you can see. When you're waiting in line, pause and feel your feet on the ground. You're training your nervous system to be able to shift gears, to move from activation to calm, to access choice. The more you practice in low-stakes moments, the more available this skill becomes in high-stakes moments. Another practice: recall a recent time when you were triggered and reacted unconsciously. Replay the scene in your mind, but this time, imagine yourself pausing. Visualize the entire sequence, noticing, stopping, breathing, grounding, naming, choosing. Neuroscience research shows that mental rehearsal activates the same neural pathways as actual practice. You're literally rewiring your brain. Do this visualization practice daily for 2 weeks, and you'll notice that when real triggers arise, the pause happens more naturally. Your brain has a template now, a different pathway to follow. Part 2: Awareness versus Impulse. The battle within. Within you, two forces are constantly at work: awareness and impulse. Impulse is fast, automatic, unconscious. It's the voice that says, react now. Defend yourself. Strike back. Awareness is slower, intentional, conscious. It's the voice that says, wait. Look more closely. Consider your options. When you're triggered, impulse has a significant head start. It activates in milliseconds, flooding you with the urge to act. Awareness needs time to arrive, like a wise elder climbing up from the valley while impulse is already racing down the mountain. Your work in mastering anger is to give awareness more time to arrive, to slow down impulse enough that awareness can catch up. This is the essence of creating space. Think of impulse and awareness as two different parts of your brain. Impulse lives in the limbic system, the emotional brain, and particularly in the amygdala. This part of your brain is ancient, developed millions of years ago, designed for survival in life or death situations. It's fast, efficient, and operates on simple rules: threat detected, react immediately. Awareness lives in the prefrontal cortex, the newest part of your brain evolutionarily. This is the part that can think abstractly, consider consequences, hold multiple perspectives, reflect on values. It's slower, more complex, and requires more energy to operate. When you're triggered, impulse hijacks the system. But you can train awareness to be stronger, faster, more present. You can shift the balance of power. Strengthening awareness. Awareness is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it becomes. And the primary way to strengthen awareness is through mindfulness practice. Mindfulness is the practice of paying attention to your present moment experience with curiosity and without judgment. It's the foundation of awareness. When you practice mindfulness regularly, you're training your brain to observe rather than just react, to notice rather than just be swept away. Here's a simple mindfulness practice you can do right now. For the next 60 seconds, simply notice your breath. Don't try to change it, just observe it. Notice the cool air entering your nostrils, the slight pause, the warm air exiting. Notice the movement in your chest and belly. When your mind wanders, and it will, gently bring your attention back to the breath. This simple practice is profound. You're training your attention, your ability to notice, your capacity to return to presence. These are the exact skills you need when you're triggered. Research shows that regular mindfulness practice literally changes the brain. It increases the density of gray matter in the prefrontal cortex and decreases the reactivity of the amygdala. In other words, it strengthens awareness and calms impulse at the neurological level. You don't need to meditate for hours. Even 5 to 10 minutes daily makes a measurable difference. And the effects compound over time. After 8 weeks of daily practice, people report significantly better emotional regulation, less reactivity, and greater ability to pause before responding. The observer self. There's a part of you that can observe your anger without being consumed by it. Psychologists call this the observer self or witnessing consciousness. It's the part that can say, I notice I'm feeling angry, rather than I am anger. This distinction is crucial. When you're identified with your anger, when you are the anger, you have no choice but to act it out. But when you can observe your anger, when there's a part of you watching the anger, you suddenly have space, distance, perspective. Cultivating this observer self is one of the most important practices you can develop. Here's how: throughout your day, practice making observation statements to yourself. I notice I'm feeling frustrated right now. I notice my shoulders are tense. I notice I'm having the thought that this is unfair. I notice I'm feeling the urge to check my phone. These simple statements create a gap between you and your experience. You're not trying to change anything, just noticing. But in that noticing, something profound happens. You're no longer completely identified with the experience. There's you, and there's the experience you're having. This creates freedom. When you're triggered, this practice becomes, I notice I'm triggered. I notice anger is arising. I notice the impulse to lash out. You're not suppressing anything. You're just observing. And in that observation, the grip of impulse loosens just slightly, enough for awareness to step in. Working with impulse. Now, it's important to understand that we're not trying to eliminate impulse. Impulse is not your enemy. It's a natural part of being human, and in true danger, it might save your life. The goal is not to destroy impulse but to create a healthier relationship with it. Think of impulse as a young, excitable dog. It sees something interesting or threatening and immediately wants to chase it. It's not bad, it's just untrained. Your job is not to punish the dog but to train it, to teach it to wait for your signal before running. This means acknowledging your impulses without immediately acting on them. When you feel the urge to yell, you can notice, there's the urge to yell. When you feel the impulse to send an angry text, you can notice, there's the impulse to text. You're not saying it's wrong. You're just creating a moment of recognition. Often, simply acknowledging an impulse reduces its power. It's like letting steam out of a pressure cooker. The energy is released safely rather than explosively. Try this practice. When you notice an impulse, place your hand on your heart and say silently, I see you. I hear you. Thank you for trying to protect me. I've got this now. You're speaking to the impulse, to that reactive part of yourself, with kindness rather than harshness. You're letting it know that you're in charge, that you can handle the situation, that it can relax. This approach, called internal family systems or parts work, treats different aspects of yourself as parts of a whole system, all trying to help in their own way. When you befriend your impulse rather than fighting it, it becomes less dominant. The window of tolerance. Psychiatrist Dan Siegel describes something called the window of tolerance. This is the zone of arousal where you can function optimally, where you can think clearly, feel your emotions without being overwhelmed, and respond flexibly to challenges. When you're within your window of tolerance, awareness is accessible. You have choice. You can pause, reflect, and respond skillfully. But when you're triggered, you move outside this window. You either become hyperaroused, flooded with intense emotion, heart racing, ready to fight or flee, or you become hypoaroused, shut down, numb, disconnected, frozen. In either of these states, awareness is offline. Impulse runs the show. Your work is twofold. First, to widen your window of tolerance through practices like mindfulness, somatic regulation, and therapy, so you can handle more stress without being pushed outside it. Second, to recognize when you've left your window and to have tools to return to it. The pause technique is one such tool. When you pause, breathe, ground, and name, you're actively bringing yourself back into your window of tolerance, back to a place where awareness can function. Another powerful tool is movement. When you're hyperaroused, gentle movement like walking, stretching, or progressive muscle relaxation helps discharge the excess energy. When you're hypoaroused, more vigorous movement like jumping jacks or dancing helps bring energy back into your system. Learn to recognize your personal signs that you've left your window. For some, it's the feeling of heat and pressure building. For others, it's a sense of disconnection or fog. Once you recognize it, you can intervene, using your tools to return to your window where choice exists. Part 3: Training your brain to slow down. Neuroplasticity and change. Here's the most hopeful message I can share with you: your brain can change. Neuroscientists call this neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. What this means practically is that even if you've been reactive for decades, even if your patterns feel completely hardwired, you can create new patterns. You can train your brain to slow down, to pause, to choose awareness over impulse. But like any training, this requires consistent practice, patience, and the right techniques. You wouldn't expect to run a marathon without training, and you shouldn't expect to master your anger without practice either. The key principle is this: neurons that fire together, wire together. Every time you pause instead of reacting, every time you choose awareness over impulse, you're strengthening that neural pathway. You're making it easier for your brain to choose that path next time. At first, the pause will feel forced, difficult, unnatural. The old reactive pathway is well worn, like a highway. The new pathway is like a faint trail through the woods. But with each repetition, the trail gets clearer, wider, easier to find. Eventually, with enough practice, the new pathway can become your default. This process doesn't happen overnight. Neuroscientists estimate it takes about 66 days of consistent practice for a new behavior to become automatic. But many people notice changes much sooner, sometimes within a week or two of dedicated practice. The stop practice. One of the most effective techniques for training your brain to slow down is called the stop practice. This is an acronym that gives you a simple, memorable structure to follow when triggered. S. Stop. The moment you notice activation, stop whatever you're doing. Stop speaking, stop typing, stop moving. Create a physical pause. T. Take a breath. Take one full, slow breath. This doesn't have to be a complicated breathing technique. Just one conscious breath is enough to begin shifting your state. O. Observe. Notice what's happening in your body, your emotions, your thoughts. What sensations are present? What feelings? What story is your mind telling? Just observe without judging or trying to change anything. P. Proceed. Now, having stopped, breathed, and observed, proceed with intention. Choose your response based on your values rather than your reactivity. Practice this stop sequence multiple times every day, even when you're not triggered. Make it a habit. When you're drinking your morning coffee, stop. Notice the warmth of the cup, the aroma, the taste. When you're walking, stop. Notice your footsteps, the movement of your body, the environment around you. By practicing stop and calm moments, you're training your brain so that when the trigger comes, the stop sequence activates more easily. It becomes a reliable tool rather than a desperate last resort. Repetition and consistency. The secret to training your brain is not intensity but consistency. It's better to practice pausing for 2 minutes every day than to do a marathon session once a week. Your brain learns through repetition, through patterns repeated consistently over time. Think of it like learning a language. You don't become fluent by studying intensely for one day. You become fluent through consistent daily practice over months and years. The same is true for emotional regulation. Create a daily practice routine. Perhaps every morning, you spend 5 minutes doing mindfulness meditation, training your awareness. Perhaps several times during the day, you practice the stop technique or the pause sequence. Perhaps every evening, you journal about moments when you were triggered and how you responded, reinforcing the learning. The specific practices matter less than the consistency. Find what works for you and commit to it daily. Mark it on your calendar. Set reminders. Make it as non-negotiable as brushing your teeth. And be patient with yourself. There will be days when you forget, days when you react instead of responding, days when the old patterns take over. This is normal. This is part of the process. Don't let setbacks discourage you. Each moment is a new opportunity to practice. The role of self-compassion. As you train your brain to slow down, one of the most important elements is self-compassion. Research by psychologist Kristin Neff shows that self-compassion is actually more effective than self-criticism in motivating change. When you mess up, when you react angrily despite your best intentions, the way you treat yourself in that moment matters enormously. If you respond with harsh self-criticism, "I'm such a failure, I'll never change, what's wrong with me?" you're actually triggering your threat system again, which makes you more likely to react poorly next time. But if you respond with self-compassion, that was difficult. I'm learning. I'll try again. You're activating your caregiving system, which calms your nervous system and makes learning possible. Here's a self-compassion practice to use after a difficult moment. Place both hands on your heart. Feel the warmth and gentle pressure of your own touch. Take a slow breath. Now say to yourself, this is a moment of suffering. Reacting angrily is part of being human. May I be kind to myself. May I learn from this. May I grow. This simple practice acknowledges the difficulty, normalizes the struggle, and offers yourself the kindness you need to continue learning. It creates the psychological safety necessary for change. Bringing it all together. As we close this chapter, let's integrate what we've explored. Creating space between trigger and reaction is the cornerstone of mastering anger. This space is created through the pause technique, through strengthening awareness over impulse, through training your brain with consistent practice. You now have concrete tools: the 6-step pause sequence, the stop practice, mindfulness meditation, the observer self, and self-compassion. These aren't just concepts. They're practices you can implement immediately. Your work now is to commit to this training. Start today. Practice the pause sequence 3 times. Set a reminder to do the stop practice tomorrow. Begin a 5-minute daily mindfulness practice. Journal about your triggers and your responses. Remember, this is not about perfection. It's about progress. Every pause you create, even if you still react afterward, is a victory. Every moment of awareness, even if impulse still wins, is strengthening the right neural pathways. You are literally rewiring your brain with each practice. Take a final deep breath with me now. In through your nose, slowly and deeply, hold at the top, and out through your mouth, even more slowly. Feel yourself here, now, present. You are capable of this change. You are worthy of this peace. One pause at a time, one breath at a time, you are transforming your relationship with anger from unconscious reaction to conscious choice. Thank you for your commitment to this journey. In our next chapter, we'll explore specific regulation techniques to use when emotions are intense. Until then, practice your pause. Create your space. Trust the process. You've got this. Chapter 3: Dissolving Anger with Cognitive Techniques. Take a slow breath with me now. In and out. Feel your shoulders drop just a little. Good. You've journeyed through understanding anger's physiology, and now we arrive at perhaps the most transformative territory of all, the landscape of your thoughts. This chapter explores how the stories you tell yourself shape not just your emotions, but your entire experience of reality itself. Consider this for a moment: 2 people can experience the exact same event. A colleague takes credit for their work, a partner forgets an anniversary, a driver cuts them off in traffic, yet one person walks away mildly annoyed while the other seethes for days. What creates this difference? The answer lies not in the event itself, but in the invisible architecture of thought that surrounds it. The cognitive techniques we'll explore together aren't about suppressing your anger or pretending everything is fine. They're about seeing more clearly. About recognizing that between any stimulus and your response lies a sacred space, a space where you have more power than you might imagine. In that space lives your freedom. Part 1: The Stories We Tell Ourselves. Understanding Cognitive Distortions. Your mind is an extraordinary storytelling machine. Every moment, it weaves narratives to make sense of the vast complexity around you. Most of the time, this serves you beautifully. But sometimes, perhaps more often than you realize, your mind tells stories that aren't quite accurate. These are what psychologists call cognitive distortions, and they act like funhouse mirrors, warping reality in ways that amplify anger. Let me share with you the most common distortions that fuel unnecessary anger. Mind reading: you assume you know what others are thinking. Your partner is quiet, and you immediately conclude they're angry with you. Your boss doesn't respond to your email, and you decide they're displeased with your work. But here's the truth: you cannot read minds. That silence might be preoccupation, fatigue, or simply someone lost in their own thoughts. When you catch yourself mind reading, pause. Notice it. Then ask yourself, what evidence do I actually have for this story? Catastrophizing, your mind jumps immediately to the worst possible outcome. A mistake at work becomes career-ending. A disagreement with a friend means the friendship is over. Your teenager comes home late, and you've already imagined the hospital, the police, the tragedy. This mental habit keeps your nervous system in constant alarm, flooding you with stress hormones and priming you for anger. The antidote is simple but profound. Ask yourself, what's the most likely outcome here? What would I tell a friend in this situation? Should statements, you carry an invisible rulebook of how things should be. People should be more considerate. Traffic should move faster. Life should be fair. Every time reality deviates from these shoulds, you experience anger not because something terrible has happened, but because your expectations haven't been met. The Buddhist teacher Pema Chodron teaches us that suffering comes from arguing with reality. When you notice yourself thinking should, try replacing it with I prefer or I wish. This small shift acknowledges your desires while releasing the rigid demand that reality conform to them. Personalization. You take things personally that have nothing to do with you. Someone is rude, and you assume you've done something wrong. A friend cancels plans, and you interpret it as rejection. But most of the time, other people's behavior is about their own inner state, their struggles, their preoccupations, not about you at all. This realization is tremendously liberating. It's not always about you. And that's okay. Overgeneralization, one event becomes evidence of a never-ending pattern. One person disappoints you, and suddenly everyone is disappointing. Your partner forgets something once, and they always forget. Listen for words like always, never, everyone, no one. These are clues that your mind is overgeneralizing. The truth is usually more nuanced, more complex, and more hopeful than these sweeping statements suggest. The practice of reframing. Now, let's move from understanding these distortions to actively working with them. This is where reframing comes in. The art of consciously choosing a different story, a different interpretation, one that serves you better. Reframing isn't about lying to yourself or adopting false positivity. It's about recognizing that most situations are genuinely ambiguous, and you have some choice in how you interpret them. It's about asking, what else might be true here? Let me walk you through a practical example. Imagine your teenage daughter comes home 2 hours past curfew. Your immediate story might be, she's being disrespectful. She doesn't care about our rules. She's becoming irresponsible. Feel the anger that rises with that narrative. Now, let's practice reframing. Take a breath. What else might be true? Perhaps her phone died and she couldn't call. Perhaps she was helping a friend who was upset. Perhaps she lost track of time, not out of disrespect, but because she's still developing her executive function. Her brain literally isn't finished building the structures for time management yet. She's not a disrespectful person, she's a developing human who made a mistake. Notice something important here: reframing doesn't mean there are no consequences. You might still have a serious conversation about safety and communication. But you're having that conversation from a place of parental concern and teaching rather than from rage. The outcome for both of you will be dramatically different. Here's a powerful reframing technique you can practice right now. Think of something that made you angry recently. Something small, perhaps a minor irritation that's still lingering in your system. Got it? Good. Now, close your eyes for a moment and notice where you feel that anger in your body. Your jaw? Your chest? Your shoulders? Just notice it, with curiosity rather than judgment. Now, imagine you're watching this situation from outside yourself, as if you're a compassionate observer watching a film. From this perspective, what else do you notice? What might you not have seen from inside the heat of the moment? What factors might you have missed: the other person's stress, their circumstances, your own hunger or fatigue? Finally, imagine explaining this situation to a wise mentor or friend whose judgment you trust completely. What would they see that you might have missed? How might they interpret what happened? This exercise, which you can do in just 2 or 3 minutes, activates different neural pathways in your brain. It moves you out of the amygdala's fight or flight response and engages your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain capable of nuanced thinking, empathy, and wise decision-making. The subtle art of the pause. Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space lies your power. These words, often attributed to Viktor Frankl, contain perhaps the most important psychological insight of the 20th century. That space, that pause, is where reframing happens. But in our fast-paced world, we've lost the habit of pausing. We react instantly, automatically, sometimes before we're even conscious of what we're reacting to. So let's cultivate that pause together. Here's a technique called the sacred pause, and it takes just 10 seconds. When you feel anger rising, before you speak or act, do this. Take one slow breath in through your nose, counting to 4. Hold for a count of 2. Exhale slowly through your mouth, counting to 6. As you breathe, say silently to yourself, "This too shall pass." That's it. 10 seconds. But in those 10 seconds, you create space. You give your prefrontal cortex time to come online. You remember that you have a choice. The Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh teaches a beautiful variation of this. Breathing in, I know I am breathing in. Breathing out, I know I am breathing out. This simple acknowledgement brings you into the present moment, away from the story your mind is spinning about what happened or what might happen, and into the reality of right now, which is usually more manageable than the story suggests. Part 2, Perspective Shifting, Seeing Through Different Eyes. The power of multiple perspectives. Your perspective is like a window. It determines what you see, what you notice, what you emphasize. But here's the extraordinary thing, you can change windows. You can look at the same situation from different angles, and each angle will reveal something new. Let me tell you about Marcus, a client I worked with who was furious with his business partner. "He's sabotaging our company," Marcus told me, his jaw tight. "He questions every decision I make. He's impossible to work with." I asked Marcus a simple question. "What does he think is happening?" Marcus paused. He'd been so consumed by his own narrative that he'd never seriously considered his partner's perspective. When he genuinely tried to step into his partner's shoes, something shifted. He realized his partner felt excluded from major decisions and was trying to stay involved. What Marcus had interpreted as sabotage was actually an attempt to contribute. This doesn't mean Marcus's partner was communicating effectively, he wasn't. But understanding the intention behind the behavior completely changed Marcus's emotional response. His anger dissolved into something more productive, a recognition that they needed better communication systems. This is the power of perspective shifting. It doesn't require you to agree with the other person. It simply requires you to recognize that they, like you, are operating from their own inner logic, their own fears and needs and histories. The multiple perspectives exercise. Let me guide you through a powerful exercise for perspective shifting. You can do this mentally, or even better, write it out. Think of a conflict or situation that's generating anger for you. Now, explore it from 5 different perspectives. Your perspective, describe the situation as you see it. What happened? How did it make you feel? What meaning did you give it? Don't censor yourself here, this is your truth as you experience it. The other person's perspective, now, imagine you are them. What might they be feeling? What pressures might they be under? What fears or needs might be driving their behavior? Try to describe the situation as they might describe it to someone they trust. A neutral observer's perspective, imagine a wise, compassionate, completely neutral third party witnessed the situation. What would they see? What patterns might they notice? What would they say to both of you? Your future self's perspective, jump forward 5 years. Your future self, having lived through this and much more, looks back on this moment. What does it look like from that distance? How important does it seem? What might your future self want to tell you about this situation? Your compassionate self's perspective. This is the wisest, most loving part of you, the part that can hold complexity and contradiction, that understands human imperfection, that knows suffering when it sees it. What does this part of you see in this situation? What does it understand about both you and the other person? Taking the time to explore these perspectives doesn't mean your anger was unjustified. It means you're developing the capacity to hold multiple truths simultaneously, a capacity that psychologists call cognitive complexity and that leads directly to emotional regulation. The courtroom technique. Here's another powerful method for perspective shifting, one I learned from cognitive behavioral therapy pioneers: the courtroom technique. Imagine your angry thought is on trial. You're going to examine the evidence for and against it, just like a lawyer would. Let's say your thought is, "My friend doesn't care about me because they canceled our plans." Evidence for this thought: they canceled. You're disappointed. This has happened before. Evidence against this thought: they gave you advance notice. They apologized. They've been dealing with health issues lately. They suggested rescheduling. They've shown up for you many times in the past. When you were going through your divorce, they called you every single day. Now, based on all the evidence, what's a more accurate thought? Perhaps, "My friend had to cancel," which is disappointing, but it doesn't mean they don't care. They're dealing with their own challenges right now. Feel the difference? The first thought generates anger, hurt, withdrawal. The second thought generates understanding, patience, perhaps concern for your friend. Same situation. Different story. Different emotional outcome. Part 3: How calm people think differently. The cognitive habits of emotional regulation. You've probably noticed that some people seem naturally calm, even in situations that would send others into a tailspin. What's their secret? It's not that they don't experience anger or frustration, they're human, after all. It's that they've developed specific cognitive habits that prevent anger from hijacking their system. Let's explore these habits together, because every single one of them can be learned. Habit 1: They default to curiosity over judgment. Calm people, when something goes wrong or someone behaves badly, ask questions before making conclusions. Instead of immediately thinking he's an idiot or she's selfish, they wonder, what's going on for them? What am I missing here? What might explain this? This curiosity isn't naive. It's sophisticated. It recognizes that human behavior is complex, that people rarely act from simple malice, that there's usually more to the story than appears on the surface. Try this practice for one full day. Whenever you notice yourself making a negative judgment about someone, pause and get curious instead. Ask yourself, what might explain this behavior? You'll be amazed at how this simple shift changes your emotional landscape. Habit 2: They separate person from behavior. When calm people are dealing with problematic behavior, they make a crucial distinction: they separate the person from their actions. They don't think you're a terrible person. They think what you did wasn't okay. This might sound like semantics, but it's profoundly different. When you label someone as fundamentally bad, you create an enemy. Your brain perceives threat. Your anger intensifies. But when you recognize that a good person can do something harmful, that someone can make a mistake or a poor choice without being defined by it, you leave room for dialogue, repair, growth. Here's how this sounds in practice. Instead of "You're so selfish," try "When you made plans without checking with me, I felt hurt and excluded." See the difference? The second statement addresses the behavior and its impact without attacking the person's character. Habit 3: They practice emotional granularity. Most people have a relatively simple emotional vocabulary. They're fine or they're angry. But calm people have developed what psychologist Lisa Feldman Barrett calls emotional granularity, the ability to make fine distinctions between different emotional states. They don't just feel angry. They notice, "I'm feeling dismissed. I'm feeling disrespected. I'm feeling anxious about what this means. I'm feeling disappointed because I had different expectations. Why does this matter?" Because when you can name your emotion precisely, you can address its root cause. Angry is vague and overwhelming. Disappointed because my expectations weren't met is specific and workable. You can do something about unmet expectations. You can examine whether those expectations were reasonable. You can communicate about them. You can adjust them. Practice building your emotional vocabulary. Get curious about the subtle flavors of your experience. Are you angry, or are you actually hurt? Frustrated or anxious? Betrayed or disappointed? Each emotion points toward different needs and different solutions. Habit 4, they hold intentions lightly. Calm people make plans and have preferences, certainly. But they hold them lightly. They know that life is unpredictable, that other people have free will, that circumstances change. So when things don't go according to plan, they adjust rather than rage against reality. This is what psychologists call flexibility, and it's one of the strongest predictors of well-being. Rigid thinking, things must be this way, leads to chronic frustration because reality rarely cooperates with our demands. Flexible thinking, I prefer this, but I can adapt if needed, allows you to roll with life's inevitable surprises. Notice your language around plans and expectations. How often do you say must or should or have to? Try experimenting with softer language, I'd like to or I hope to or I'm planning to. This linguistic shift actually rewires your cognitive patterns, making you more adaptive and less anger-prone. Habit 5, they zoom out regularly. Calm people have cultivated what I call the long view. They regularly zoom out from whatever's happening right now and see it in broader context. They ask themselves, will this matter in a year? In 5 years? At the end of my life? This isn't about minimizing real problems. It's about maintaining perspective, about not allowing minor irritations to consume your emotional energy as if they were existential threats. Here's a powerful practice: when you're upset about something, imagine concentric circles radiating out from this moment, 1 week from now, 1 month, 1 year, 5 years, 10 years. From each of those vantage points, how important does this situation look? This exercise activates your brain's capacity for perspective and often dramatically reduces anger. The reattribution model. Let me teach you one more powerful cognitive technique that calm people use instinctively: reattribution. This is the practice of changing where you place responsibility or blame in a way that's both accurate and helpful. When something goes wrong, your mind immediately starts looking for causes. Often, it settles on causes that maximize your anger. They did this because they're inconsiderate, or this happened because I'm unlucky, or the world is against me. Reattribution asks, what's a more complete, more accurate explanation? Let's say a friend snaps at you. Your immediate attribution might be, they're being mean to me. That attribution generates hurt and anger. But what if you reattribute? They're stressed about something. They're having a hard day. That comment wasn't really about me. This reattribution, if it's genuinely possible, completely changes your emotional response. Instead of anger, you might feel concern. Instead of withdrawal, you might offer support. The key is that reattribution must be honest. This isn't about making excuses for genuinely harmful behavior or letting people off the hook. It's about seeing the full picture rather than the narrowest, most anger-producing interpretation. Building your cognitive toolkit. All of these cognitive techniques: reframing, perspective shifting, curiosity, emotional granularity, flexibility, the long view, reattribution, are tools. You're building a toolkit for your mind, just as you might build a toolkit for home repairs or creative projects. And like any skill, these techniques improve with practice. At first, they might feel awkward or forced. You might only remember to use them hours after you've already gotten angry. That's completely normal. That's how learning works. But gradually, with patient practice, these techniques become more automatic. You start catching yourself earlier in the anger process, not after you've exploded, but while you're still just feeling the first flush of irritation. And eventually, you begin using these techniques preemptively, setting up your mind in ways that prevent unnecessary anger from arising in the first place. Conclusion: the freedom of flexible thinking. We've covered considerable ground in this chapter. From cognitive distortions to reframing, from perspective shifting to the habits of calm people. Let's take a moment to integrate what you've learned. The core insight threading through all of these techniques is this: your thoughts are not facts. They're interpretations, stories, best guesses about what's happening. And because they're interpretations rather than facts, you have some freedom in choosing them. This freedom is profound. It doesn't mean you can think your way out of genuine problems or that positive thinking solves everything. It means that you have more choice than you realized about which stories you tell yourself, which perspectives you adopt, which meanings you assign to events. And those choices shape everything: your emotions, your relationships, your health, your life trajectory. When you choose thoughts that are more accurate, more complete, more compassionate, you choose a different path through the world. Before we close this chapter, let's practice one final integration technique together. It combines breath, body awareness, and cognitive reframing into a single, powerful practice you can use anytime you feel anger rising. Find a comfortable position. Close your eyes if you'd like. Take 3 slow breaths, letting each exhale be longer than the inhale. With each breath, feel yourself settling more fully into this present moment. Now, bring to mind a situation that's been triggering anger for you. Don't choose the most overwhelming situation in your life. Start with something moderate, something manageable. Notice what happens in your body as you think about this situation. Where does the tension arise? What's the quality of that sensation? Just observe it with gentle curiosity, as if you're a scientist studying a fascinating phenomenon. Now, bring to mind the story you've been telling yourself about this situation. What are you making it mean? What judgments have you made? What assumptions? Just notice the story without trying to change it yet. Take another deep breath. And now ask yourself, what else might be true here? What am I not seeing? If I looked at this situation with the eyes of compassion, for myself and for everyone involved, what would I see? Let answers arise without forcing them. You might get an insight. You might just feel a slight softening. Both are valuable. Finally, imagine that this situation has already resolved. You've made it through to the other side, having handled it with wisdom and grace. Your future self looks back at your current self with compassion and encouragement. What does your future self want you to know right now? Take one more slow breath. When you're ready, open your eyes and return to the room, bringing with you any insights or shifts that emerged. This practice takes just 5 minutes, but it can create profound shifts in how you relate to anger-provoking situations. I encourage you to use it regularly, especially when you find yourself stuck in repetitive angry thoughts. Remember, the goal isn't to never feel anger. The goal is to feel it when it's appropriate, to understand what it's telling you, and to respond from a place of wisdom rather than reactivity. Every time you pause, reframe, shift perspective, or choose a more accurate thought, you're strengthening neural pathways that lead to greater calm, greater freedom, and greater peace. You're not trying to become someone who never gets angry. You're becoming someone who relates to anger differently, someone who can feel it, understand it, learn from it, and let it move through without it taking over your life. And that, my friend, is true freedom. Not freedom from anger, but freedom in how you meet it, how you work with it, how you transform it into wisdom and compassionate action. As we move forward into the next chapter, carry these tools with you. Practice them not just when anger arises, but throughout your day. Notice your thoughts. Get curious about your stories. Remember that between stimulus and response, there is always a space. And in that space, you have more power than you ever imagined. Breathe. Pause. Choose wisely. The rest will follow. Chapter 4: Emotional Regulation Tools Used by Experts. Feel the air moving through your nostrils, filling your lungs, expanding your ribcage. Hold it for just a moment. Now release it slowly, like you're blowing through a straw. Feel your shoulders drop. Good. What you just did, that simple act of conscious breathing, is the beginning of mastery. It's the first tool in what I call the expert's toolkit for emotional regulation. And here's what's remarkable: the most powerful techniques for managing anger aren't complex psychological theories or years of therapy. Their practice is so simple, so accessible, that you can use them right now, in this moment, wherever you are. In this chapter, we're going to explore the techniques that therapists, meditation teachers, neuroscientists, and emotional regulation experts use themselves when anger threatens to overwhelm their systems. These aren't theoretical concepts. These are battle-tested tools that work on the body and nervous system directly, often producing results within seconds or minutes. You're about to learn how to interrupt anger's hijacking of your system, how to reset your nervous system when it's gone into overdrive, and how to deactivate an angry mind almost instantly. These techniques have been refined over thousands of years in contemplative traditions and validated by cutting-edge neuroscience. They work. And they're yours to use starting today. Part 1: The Science of Breathing, your most powerful tool. Why breathing changes everything. Let me share something that might surprise you. Your breath is the only part of your autonomic nervous system that you can consciously control. Your autonomic nervous system regulates everything that happens automatically in your body: your heart rate, your digestion, your blood pressure, your stress response. Normally, you can't voluntarily slow your heart rate or tell your adrenal glands to stop releasing cortisol. But you can control your breath. And because your breath is intimately connected to every other autonomic function, when you change your breathing, you change everything else. This is why breathwork is the cornerstone of virtually every emotion regulation system ever developed, from ancient yoga practices to modern therapeutic interventions. When you're angry, your breathing becomes shallow and rapid. Your body is preparing for fight or flight, pumping oxygen quickly to your muscles. This rapid breathing maintains your activated state, it keeps the anger alive. But here's the extraordinary thing: the relationship between breathing and emotion goes both ways. Just as anger changes your breath, changing your breath changes your anger. Slow, deep breathing sends a direct signal to your brainstem that there's no emergency. It activates your parasympathetic nervous system, the rest and digest system, which is incompatible with the fight or flight response. You literally cannot be in full fight or flight mode while breathing slowly and deeply. The two states cannot coexist. This means that your breath gives you direct access to your emotional state. It's your remote control for your nervous system. And you carry it with you always, available in any moment, in any situation. The 4-7-8 breath, your emergency reset. Let me teach you the first technique, one I learned from Dr. Andrew Weil, a pioneer in integrative medicine. It's called the 4-7-8 breath, and it's designed to rapidly calm your nervous system. I want you to practice this with me right now, so you'll have it available the next time anger rises. Here's how it works. Place the tip of your tongue against the ridge of tissue behind your upper front teeth. Keep it there throughout the entire practice. This might feel odd at first, but it completes an energetic circuit in your body according to ancient breathing practices. Now, exhale completely through your mouth, making a whoosh sound. Empty your lungs fully. Close your mouth and inhale quietly through your nose for a count of 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. Fill your lungs comfortably but not forcefully. Now hold your breath for a count of 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is the most important part. The hold allows oxygen to penetrate more deeply into your bloodstream. Exhale completely through your mouth for a count of 8, making that whoosh sound again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Push out all the air. That's one cycle. Now repeat it 3 more times, for a total of 4 complete breaths. Notice what's happened in your body. Feel the shift. Your heart rate has slowed. Your shoulders have dropped. Your jaw has unclenched slightly. You've activated your parasympathetic nervous system and created a physiological state that's incompatible with intense anger. This technique takes less than 90 seconds. You can do it anywhere: in a meeting, in your car, before responding to a difficult email, in the middle of an argument if you excuse yourself briefly. Master this technique. Make it automatic. It's one of the most powerful tools you'll ever possess for emotional regulation. Box breathing, the Navy SEAL technique. The next breathing technique comes from an unlikely source, the U.S. Navy SEALs. These warriors face some of the most intense stress imaginable, and they've developed breathing techniques to maintain clarity and calm under extreme pressure. If it works for them in combat situations, it will work for you when your teenager talks back or your boss criticizes your work. Box breathing, also called square breathing, creates perfect balance in your nervous system. Here's how to practice it. Visualize a box or a square. You're going to breathe around the four sides of this square, with each side representing a count of 4. Start by exhaling completely, emptying your lungs. Now, breathe in slowly through your nose for a count of 4. Imagine traveling up the first side of the box. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath for a count of 4. You're traveling across the top of the box. 1, 2, 3, 4. Exhale slowly through your mouth for a count of 4. You're traveling down the opposite side. 1, 2, 3, 4. Hold your breath, lungs empty, for a count of 4. You're traveling across the bottom of the box, back to where you started. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's one complete circuit around the box. Continue for 5 to 10 rounds. What makes box breathing so powerful is its perfect symmetry. The equal counts create balance. Balance between inhale and exhale, balance between full lungs and empty lungs, balance between activation and relaxation. This balance spreads throughout your entire system, creating emotional equilibrium. Navy SEALs use this technique before missions to sharpen their focus and calm their nerves. You can use it before difficult conversations, presentations, or any situation where you need to be calm and clear-headed. Practice it daily, even when you're not angry, and it will become a neurological pathway you can access instantly when you need it most. Coherent breathing, the rhythm of resilience. Now I want to teach you about coherent breathing, a technique based on research into heart rate variability. Your heart doesn't beat like a metronome, there's natural variation between beats, and this variation is actually a sign of health and resilience. When you're stressed or angry, this variation decreases. When you're calm and resilient, it increases. Coherent breathing optimizes your heart rate variability by breathing at a rate of approximately 5 breaths per minute. This is slower than your normal breathing. Most people breathe 12 to 20 times per minute, but it's the rate that creates maximum coherence between your heart, brain, and breathing. Here's the practice. Set a timer for 5 minutes. Get comfortable and close your eyes if you wish. Breathe in slowly through your nose for a count of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Breathe out slowly through your nose for a count of 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Continue this rhythm for the full 5 minutes. Don't force the breath or strain. If a 5 count feels too long, start with 4 and work your way up. The goal is smooth, effortless breathing at this slower pace. As you practice, notice how your entire system begins to synchronize. Your heartbeat, your breath, your brainwaves, they all start moving together in coherent rhythm. This is why the technique is called coherent breathing. You're creating internal harmony. What's remarkable about coherent breathing is that its benefits extend far beyond the practice session. When you do this daily, even for just 5 minutes, you increase your baseline resilience. You become less reactive overall. Your nervous system develops a kind of shock absorber that makes you less vulnerable to emotional hijacking. Research shows that people who practice coherent breathing regularly experience reduced anxiety, better emotional regulation, improved focus, and even better sleep. It's like a software update for your nervous system, it optimizes everything. The physiological sigh, your natural reset button. Here's a breathing pattern that your body already knows, though you might not have noticed it. Watch a baby or a dog after they've been crying or stressed, they spontaneously do a double inhale followed by a long exhale. It looks like this: quick breath in, another quick breath in, then a long sigh out. This is called a physiological sigh, and neuroscientist Dr. Andrew Huberman has identified it as the fastest way to reduce stress in real time. Your body does this automatically sometimes, but you can also do it deliberately when you need rapid calming. Try it with me now. Take a deep breath in through your nose, filling your lungs about halfway. Without exhaling, take another sharp breath in through your nose, filling your lungs completely. This second inhale reinflates the little air sacs in your lungs that tend to collapse during stress. Now exhale slowly and completely through your mouth, taking as long as you comfortably can. Do this 2 or 3 times in succession. Feel that immediate relief? That's your body activating its natural calming mechanism. The physiological sigh works because it rapidly offloads carbon dioxide from your system, which has an immediate calming effect on your brain. Use this technique when you need instant relief. When you receive an email that makes your blood boil. When someone cuts you off in traffic. When you're about to say something you'll regret. 3 physiological sighs take less than 30 seconds and can dramatically reduce your activation level. Alternate nostril breathing, balancing the mind. This next technique comes from the yoga tradition and might seem unusual at first, but its effects are profound. Alternate nostril breathing, or nadi shodhana in Sanskrit, balances the left and right hemispheres of your brain and creates a sense of centered calm. Here's how to practice it. Sit comfortably with your spine straight. Raise your right hand and place your right thumb beside your right nostril and your right ring finger beside your left nostril. Your index and middle fingers can rest on your forehead or curl into your palm, whatever feels natural. Close your right nostril with your thumb and inhale slowly through your left nostril for a count of 4. Close both nostrils briefly, holding the breath for a count of 4. Release your thumb and exhale through your right nostril for a count of 6. Keeping your left nostril closed, inhale through your right nostril for a count of 4. Close both nostrils and hold for a count of 4. Release your ring finger and exhale through your left nostril for a count of 6. That's 1 complete round. Continue for 5 to 10 rounds. What's happening here is fascinating. Each nostril is connected to different aspects of your nervous system and different hemispheres of your brain. Your right nostril is associated with heating, energizing qualities, and your left brain hemisphere, the logical, analytical side. Your left nostril is associated with cooling, calming qualities, and your right brain hemisphere, the intuitive, emotional side. By breathing through alternate nostrils, you're quite literally balancing these opposing forces. You're integrating logic and emotion, activation and relaxation, heating and cooling. The result is a profound sense of equilibrium that naturally reduces anger and reactivity. Practice this technique when you have a bit more time and privacy. It's perfect for morning or evening routines. Many people find it especially helpful before bed, as it quiets the mind and prepares you for sleep. Part 2: Nervous System Reset Techniques for Rapid Regulation. Understanding your nervous system states. Before we dive into specific reset techniques, let's understand what we're working with. Your autonomic nervous system has 2 main branches. The sympathetic nervous system, which activates your fight or flight response, and the parasympathetic nervous system, which activates your rest and digest response. Think of these as a gas pedal and a brake pedal. When you're angry, your foot is pressed hard on the gas. Your sympathetic system is flooding you with stress hormones, increasing your heart rate, tensing your muscles, sharpening your focus on threats. This served our ancestors well when facing physical dangers, but it's usually counterproductive in modern life when you're facing an annoying email or a frustrating conversation. The techniques in this section are designed to activate your parasympathetic brake pedal, engaging your body's natural calming mechanisms. These aren't just mental tricks, they work directly on your physiology, creating immediate shifts in your nervous system state. Cold water exposure, the instant circuit breaker. One of the fastest ways to reset your nervous system is through cold water exposure. When you experience intense cold on your face, you trigger something called the mammalian dive reflex, an ancient survival mechanism that immediately slows your heart rate and redirects blood flow to your vital organs. Here's how to use this technique when anger is overwhelming you. Go to a sink and fill a bowl with very cold water. Add ice if possible. Take a deep breath in. Hold your breath and submerge your face in the cold water for 15 to 30 seconds. Come up, breathe normally, and notice the shift. If you can't immerse your face, splash cold water on your face, focusing on your forehead, eyes, and temples. Hold a cold, wet cloth over your face. The key is getting your face cold, particularly the area around your eyes. This technique is used in dialectical behavior therapy, one of the most effective therapeutic approaches for emotional regulation. Because it works so reliably and so fast. The cold activates your vagus nerve, the major nerve of your parasympathetic system, creating an immediate calming effect. I know it might sound too simple or too strange, but I encourage you to try it. The next time you're furiously angry, when you feel like you're about to explode, excuse yourself, go to a bathroom, and splash cold water on your face. The shift can be dramatic and immediate. Vigorous exercise, metabolizing the stress response. When anger floods your system with adrenaline and cortisol, those stress hormones are preparing your body for physical action. Your muscles are primed to fight or flee. If you don't discharge this energy somehow, it stays locked in your system, maintaining your agitation. This is where vigorous exercise comes in. When you engage in intense physical activity, you complete the stress response cycle. You use up those stress hormones for their intended purpose, energizing physical action. This is why you often feel dramatically calmer after a hard workout, even if you were furious before you started. You don't need a gym or special equipment. When you feel anger rising, try doing 50 jumping jacks as fast as you can. Running up and down stairs for 2 minutes. Doing push-ups until your muscles burn. Shadow boxing with full intensity for 3 minutes. Going outside and sprinting for 30 seconds. The key is intensity. A gentle stroll won't cut it when your system is flooded with fight or flight hormones. You need to match the intensity of your physiological arousal with the intensity of your physical output. After this burst of activity, do 5 minutes of slow, deep breathing to guide your system fully back into rest mode. You've metabolized the stress response, and now you're helping your body recognize that the emergency is over. Many of my clients keep a jump rope in their office or do burpees in their living room when they're furious. It might look silly, but it works. And unlike yelling or breaking things, vigorous exercise has only positive side effects. You're getting healthier while you're calming down. Progressive muscle relaxation, releasing tension systematically. When you're angry, tension accumulates throughout your body, jaw, shoulders, hands, stomach. Often you don't even realize how tight you've become until you deliberately release it. Progressive muscle relaxation is a technique that systematically tenses and then releases each muscle group, creating deep physical relaxation that naturally calms your emotions. Here's how to practice it. Find a comfortable position, either sitting or lying down. Close your eyes if you wish. Start with your feet. Curl your toes tightly, tensing all the muscles in your feet. Hold for 5 seconds. Notice the sensation of tension, now release. Feel the wave of relaxation flowing through your feet. Move to your calves. Flex your feet, pointing your toes toward your knees, tensing your calf muscles. Hold for 5 seconds, and release. Notice the difference between tension and relaxation. Tense your thighs by squeezing your legs together. Hold, and release. Tighten your buttocks and pelvic floor. Hold, and release. Pull your belly button toward your spine, tensing your abdomen. Hold. And release. Make fists with your hands, tensing your forearms. Hold, and release. Bring your shoulders up toward your ears, creating tension in your shoulders and neck. Hold, and release. Let your shoulders drop heavily. Scrunch up your face, squeeze your eyes shut, wrinkle your nose, purse your lips. Hold, and release. Let your face become soft and smooth. Take a moment to scan your entire body. Notice the sensation of deep relaxation flowing through you. This technique works because of a simple physiological principle: muscles that have been deliberately tensed relax more fully when released than they would otherwise. You're essentially resetting your muscular system to its natural, relaxed state. Practice this sequence when you have 10 to 15 minutes. Many people find it especially helpful before bed or during a break in a stressful day. Over time, you'll become more aware of when you're carrying unnecessary tension and can release it before it contributes to anger. Vagus nerve stimulation, activating your body's calm center. Your vagus nerve is like a superhighway connecting your brain to your heart, lungs, and digestive system. It's the main nerve of your parasympathetic system, and when you stimulate it, you activate your body's natural calming response. There are several simple ways to stimulate your vagus nerve. Humming or singing. The vibration created by humming or singing stimulates the vagus nerve where it passes near your vocal cords. Try humming a simple tune for 2 to 3 minutes. You should feel the vibration in your chest and throat. Many people report an immediate sense of calm. Gargling. Similar to humming, gargling activates the muscles in the back of your throat, stimulating the vagus nerve. Gargle with water for 30 seconds, making it slightly vigorous. Do this 2 or 3 times. Deep belly laugh. Real, from the gut laughter massively activates your vagus nerve. If you can find something genuinely funny when you're angry, a comedy video, a funny memory, a joke. Laughter can shift your state remarkably quickly. This is why humor is such a powerful de-escalation tool. Gentle massage. Massage the sides of your neck where your carotid arteries are located, using gentle circular motions. This stimulates the vagus nerve and the baroreceptors in your arteries, signaling your brain to calm down. Never press hard. Gentle pressure is sufficient and safer. These techniques might seem odd or too simple, but they're based on solid neuroscience. Your vagus nerve is your body's built-in calming system, and these practices give you direct access to it. Experiment with them and notice which ones work best for you. The power of bilateral stimulation. Here's a technique drawn from EMDR therapy and trauma treatment that has powerful calming effects: bilateral stimulation. This involves alternately stimulating the left and right sides of your body, which helps integrate the 2 hemispheres of your brain and has a naturally calming, organizing effect on your nervous system. Try this simple version called the butterfly hug. Cross your arms over your chest, placing your right hand on your left shoulder and your left hand on your right shoulder. Alternately tap your shoulders right, left, at a pace that feels soothing, usually about 1 tap per second. Continue for 2 to 3 minutes while breathing slowly and deeply. You can also do this by tapping your thighs alternately, or even by tapping your feet on the ground in an alternating pattern. The key is the alternating left-right rhythm. Many people find this technique remarkably soothing, especially when combined with slow breathing. It seems to help the nervous system reorganize and settle, moving from activation into calm. Part 3: Deactivating an angry mind instantly. The 5-sense grounding technique. When you're caught in anger, your mind is usually lost in thoughts rehashing what happened, imagining what you'll say, spinning stories about injustice and wrongdoing. The fastest way to deactivate this mental spinning is to bring yourself fully into the present moment through your physical senses. This technique engages all 5 senses to anchor you in the here and now. 5 things you can see. Look around and name 5 things you can see right now. I see the blue wall. I see the plant in the corner. I see my coffee mug. I see the window. I see the clock. Really look at each thing for a moment. For things you can touch, notice 4 things you can physically feel. I feel my feet on the floor. I feel the chair supporting my back. I feel the fabric of my shirt. I feel the air on my skin. 3 things you can hear. Listen carefully and identify 3 sounds. I hear the hum of the refrigerator. I hear a car passing outside. I hear my own breathing. 2 things you can smell. Notice 2 scents, even if they're subtle. I smell coffee. I smell the scent of my soap still lingering on my hands. 1 thing you can taste. Notice a taste in your mouth, or take a sip of water and really taste it. This technique interrupts your anger almost immediately because anger cannot sustain itself in the present moment. Anger lives in the past. They shouldn't have done that. Or the future. I'm going to tell them exactly what I think. By bringing yourself fully into your immediate sensory experience, you drop out of the angry narrative and into simple presence. Practice this technique throughout your day, even when you're not angry. It trains your brain to return to present moment awareness, making it easier to access this skill when you really need it. The naming and taming technique. Neuroscience has discovered something remarkable. When you label an emotion with words, you reduce its intensity. Brain scans show that when people name their emotions, activity decreases in the amygdala, the brain's alarm center, and increases in the prefrontal cortex, the reasoning center. Psychologist Dan Siegel calls this "name it to tame it." When you feel anger rising, try this. Say to yourself, either silently or aloud, "This is anger. I'm feeling angry right now." Get more specific. I'm feeling angry because I believe I've been disrespected. My body is tense. My heart is racing. My jaw is clenched. Add some compassionate observation. Anger is here. This is a difficult moment. I'm having a strong emotional reaction. The act of naming creates distance between you and the emotion. You move from "I am angry" to "I'm observing anger." This might seem like a subtle shift, but it's profound. When you're identified with the anger, you are the anger, it controls you. When you're observing the anger, you have space, perspective, power. Combine this with labeling physical sensations. I notice heat in my face. I notice tightness in my chest. I notice rapid breathing. The more specific and descriptive you can be, the more this technique calms your system. The mental placeholder technique. Sometimes in the middle of anger, you can't fully process what's happening, you're too activated. But you also don't want to react in ways you'll regret. This is where the mental placeholder comes in. Say to yourself, "I'm going to set this aside for now and come back to it later." Visualize yourself placing your angry thoughts into a container, a box, a drawer, a folder on a desktop. Tell yourself, "I'll deal with this at 6 p.m. or I'll process this tomorrow morning." This technique works because it acknowledges your anger, you're not suppressing or denying it, but postpones your response. You're essentially telling your brain, "Yes, this matters. Yes, we'll address it. Just not right now." Often, when you come back to the issue later, after your physiology is calmed, you'll have a completely different perspective. What seemed outrageous in the heat of the moment might seem manageable or even unimportant once you've calmed down. And if it still matters, you'll be able to address it much more effectively from a calm state. The zoom out technique. When you're angry, your awareness contracts. You become laser focused on whatever triggered you, and that narrow focus amplifies the emotion. The zoom out technique deliberately expands your awareness to create perspective. Try this. When you notice anger, mentally zoom out from the situation as if you're operating a camera. First, see yourself in the room where you are right now. See yourself as if from across the room. Now zoom out further. See the building you're in from above. Continue zooming out. See your neighborhood, your city, your region from higher and higher perspective. Keep going. See your country, your continent, the earth floating in space. From this cosmic perspective, notice how small this moment is. Notice the vastness that contains it. Now gently zoom back in, bringing this expanded perspective with you. This technique isn't about minimizing real problems. It's about breaking anger's grip by reminding yourself of the bigger picture. From this expanded perspective, you can respond to the situation more skillfully. The pattern interrupt technique. Anger often follows predictable patterns. You get triggered, your thoughts start spinning in familiar grooves, your body tenses in habitual ways, and before you know it, you're in full rage mode. Pattern interrupts are techniques that disrupt this automatic sequence. The key is to do something unexpected, something your brain doesn't anticipate. Here are some effective pattern interrupts. Physical disruption: stand up suddenly if you've been sitting. Sit down if you've been standing. Splash water on your face. Do 5 jumping jacks. The sudden physical change interrupts your emotional trajectory. Cognitive disruption: count backward from 100 by sevens. Name all the U.S. states alphabetically. Recite a poem you've memorized. These tasks require enough cognitive effort that they disrupt your angry rumination. Sensory disruption: smell something strong like peppermint oil or coffee. Hold an ice cube in your hand. Listen to a specific song that shifts your state. These intense sensory experiences can reset your emotional state. Behavioral disruption: if you're about to send an angry text, instead write it out by hand. If you're about to yell, deliberately whisper instead. The unexpected behavior disrupts the automatic pattern. The more unusual and unexpected the interrupt, the more effective it is. Your brain essentially has to stop what it's doing to process this new input, and that pause is often enough to break anger's momentum. The compassionate observer practice. This final technique draws from mindfulness and self-compassion practices. When anger is present, imagine that a wise, compassionate version of yourself is observing your experience with kindness. This compassionate observer doesn't judge your anger or try to make it go away. Instead, it acknowledges. You're really struggling right now. This is hard. It makes sense that you're angry given what happened. Place your hand on your heart and say to yourself, this is a moment of suffering. Anger is here. May I be kind to myself in this moment? This might seem counterintuitive. Isn't self-compassion just letting yourself off the hook? Actually, research shows the opposite. Self-compassion doesn't make you weak or self-indulgent. It makes you more resilient, more accountable, and better able to regulate your emotions. When you meet your anger with compassion rather than judgment, something remarkable happens: it loses its grip. Anger intensifies when you fight it or judge yourself for having it. It softens when you acknowledge it with kindness. Conclusion: building your personal regulation practice. We've covered an extensive toolkit in this chapter. Breathing techniques, nervous system resets, and mental strategies for immediate anger deactivation. You might feel overwhelmed by the sheer number of options. That's natural. You're not meant to use all of these techniques all the time. Instead, I encourage you to experiment and discover which ones work best for you in different situations. Some techniques work better for mild irritation, others for intense rage. Some you can do in public, others require privacy. Some take seconds, others need several minutes. Build your personal toolkit by trying these practices and noticing which ones create the strongest shifts for you. Here's what I recommend: choose 3 techniques to focus on this week. Perhaps the 4-7-8 breath, the 5-sense grounding, and cold water on your face. Practice them daily, even when you're not angry, so they become automatic. Then, next week, add a few more. Over time, you'll develop an intuitive sense of which tool to reach for in which situation. You'll become an expert in regulating your own nervous system. And that expertise, that mastery, will transform not just your anger, but your entire emotional life. Remember, these aren't just techniques for managing anger. They're life skills that increase your overall resilience, your stress tolerance, your emotional flexibility. They're investments in your well-being that pay dividends far beyond anger management. Before we close, let's integrate what you've learned with one final practice: a 10-breath reset you can use anytime, anywhere. Sit comfortably. Close your eyes or soften your gaze. Take 10 slow breaths. On each exhale, silently count 1, 2, 3. Up to 10. If your mind wanders, and it will, simply return to the breath and start the count over from 1. With each breath, let go a little more. Let your body soften. Let your face relax. Let your thoughts settle like snow falling in a snow globe. By the 10th breath, notice how you feel. Notice the space that's opened up. Notice that you have a choice about what happens next. This simple 10-breath practice can be your anchor, your reset button, your return to center. Use it liberally. Use it daily. Use it as a bridge back to yourself whenever you feel lost in anger or any other difficult emotion. You now have in your hands what experts have refined over thousands of years and what neuroscience has validated in the last few decades. These tools work. They work reliably. They work for everyone who practices them with patience and consistency. Your breath is always with you. Your nervous system can always be reset. Your angry mind can always be deactivated. You have everything you need. And with practice, these expert tools will become second nature. Automatic responses that guide you back to calm, back to clarity, back to your wisest self. Breathe. Reset. Begin again. That's all you ever need to do. Chapter 5: The Mindset of an Unshakable Person. We've journeyed through understanding anger, cognitive techniques, and practical tools. Now we arrive at perhaps the most transformative territory, the mindset that makes you truly unshakable. This isn't about becoming cold or detached. It's about developing such deep inner stability that external events no longer dictate your internal state. Part 1: Becoming Unoffendable. Understanding the offense mechanism. Here's a radical truth: no one can offend you without your permission. I know this might sound provocative, even frustrating. But stay with me. When someone says something harsh, what actually happens? They produce sound waves, vibrations in the air. Those waves hit your eardrums. Your brain processes the words. And then, this is the crucial part, you interpret those words. You assign them meaning. You decide what they say about you, about the other person, about the world. The offense isn't in the words themselves. It's in the meaning you give them. Two people can hear the exact same criticism, and one feels devastated while the other remains completely calm. The difference isn't in what was said, it's in how it was received. Becoming unoffendable means recognizing this distinction. It means understanding that you are the final arbiter of what has power over your emotional state. Not them. You. Let me share a story. I once worked with a surgeon named David who was constantly enraged by what he perceived as disrespect from nurses and residents. Every slight, every perceived challenge to his authority sent him into fury. His career and relationships were suffering. One day, I asked him, what if their behavior has nothing to do with respecting or disrespecting you? What if they're just busy, overwhelmed humans trying to get through their day? This question stopped him cold. He'd never considered that possibility. He'd been so identified with his status that any deviation from deference felt like a personal attack. Once he started questioning his interpretations, his entire experience transformed. The behavior hadn't changed, his relationship to it had. The practice of radical non-identification. Most offense comes from identification. You identify with your roles, your achievements, your reputation, your self-image. When someone criticizes any of these, you feel they're attacking your very essence. But here's the liberating truth: you are not your job title. You are not your accomplishments. You are not your reputation. You are not even your personality. These are things you do, things you've created, masks you wear, but they are not the deepest truth of who you are. Ancient wisdom traditions have taught this for millennia. The Hindus say neti neti, not this, not this. You are not this role, not this thought, not this emotion. You are the awareness that witnesses all of it. When you stop over-identifying with these temporary, changeable aspects of yourself, criticism loses its sting. Someone criticizes your work? That's feedback about something you created, not an attack on your essential being. Someone questions your intelligence? That's their opinion about one aspect of your functioning, not a verdict on your worth as a human. Practice this: when you feel offended, ask yourself, what am I identifying with that feels threatened? Notice the attachment. Maybe you're identifying with being seen as competent, or kind, or successful. Then remind yourself, I am more than this. This is something I do or have, not something I am. This creates space between you and the offense. In that space, you find freedom. The skill of recontextualizing. Unoffendable people have mastered recontextualization, the ability to place potentially offensive behavior in a broader, more compassionate context. When someone is rude, they ask, what pain might this person be in? When someone criticizes them, they wonder, what fear or insecurity might be driving this? When someone attacks them, they consider, what in their history makes them see threat where none exists? This isn't about excusing bad behavior or becoming a doormat. It's about understanding that hurt people hurt people. Scared people attack. Insecure people criticize. When you see the suffering beneath the offense, you respond with wisdom rather than reactivity. Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh tells a story of a man on a boat who gets hit by another boat in the fog. He's furious, how dare they be so careless? But when he looks closer, he realizes the other boat is empty, just drifting. His anger vanishes instantly. Most of the time, people who hurt us are like empty boats, they're operating on autopilot, driven by their own suffering, not intentionally trying to harm us. Try this practice, for 1 week. Whenever someone does something that would normally offend you, pause and complete this sentence. A person would only do this if they were feeling _______________________________________________________________________________________________________________ Fill in the blank with an emotion: afraid, inadequate, overwhelmed, lonely, threatened. This simple practice develops compassion, and compassion is incompatible with being offended. You cannot simultaneously understand someone's suffering and be deeply offended by them. The power of secure self-worth. Psychologists talk about secure attachment in relationships, the ability to feel safe and connected. But there's also such a thing as secure attachment to yourself, secure self-worth that doesn't depend on external validation. People who are easily offended have fragile self-worth. They need constant external validation. They're anxious about how others perceive them. They're vigilant for signs of rejection or criticism. Their sense of worth rises and falls with others' opinions like a boat on stormy seas. But when you develop secure self-worth, when you know your value is inherent, not earned, you become unoffendable. You don't need others' approval because you approve of yourself. You don't need constant validation because you validate yourself. This isn't arrogance. Arrogance is actually insecurity masked as superiority. It's puffing yourself up because deep down you feel small. True self-security is quiet, humble, and unshakable. It says, I'm imperfect and learning, and that's okay. I'm worthy of love and respect, including my own, simply because I exist. Build this secure self-worth through daily practice. Each morning, place your hand on your heart and say, I am enough. I am worthy. My value doesn't depend on what I achieve or what others think. I belong here. Not because you've earned it through accomplishments, not because you're perfect, but simply because you exist as a human being. Part 2. Not taking things personally. The 4 Agreements and Liberation. The Toltec wisdom keeper Don Miguel Ruiz teaches in the 4 Agreements that one of the most powerful spiritual practices is, don't take anything personally. Nothing others do is because of you. What others say and do is a projection of their own reality, their own dream. This is one of the most liberating truths you'll ever encounter. When you truly understand that others' behavior is about them, their history, their wounds, their perceptions, their inner state, you stop taking things personally. Your boss snaps at you? That's probably about the pressure they're under, their fear of failure, their own harsh inner critic, not about you. Your partner is distant? They're likely processing something internal, dealing with their own stress or sadness, not punishing you. A stranger is rude in line? They're carrying pain or stress you know nothing about, not targeting you specifically. Even when someone criticizes you directly, even when they say you are selfish or you are incompetent, they're really saying I perceive you as selfish or I judge your actions as incompetent, which is a statement about their perception, not an objective fact about you. Practice this distinction in your self-talk. Replace they think I'm inadequate with they perceive inadequacy. Replace they're rejecting me with they're expressing something about their needs or limits. This small linguistic shift creates enormous emotional space. Understanding projection. Here's a deeper psychological truth. People often criticize in others what they dislike or deny in themselves. The qualities that bother you most in others are usually qualities you've disowned or suppressed in yourself. This mechanism is called projection, and it's everywhere once you start noticing it. The person who constantly accuses others of being selfish? Often struggling with their own guilt about selfish desires. The person who criticizes others for being too emotional? Probably shut down their own emotional life and resents seeing emotions expressed freely. The person who sees arrogance everywhere? Likely dealing with their own shame about wanting recognition. When you understand projection, you become discriminating about criticism. You can ask yourself, is there truth here I need to hear? Or is this primarily their projection? Often, it's both. There might be a kernel of valid feedback wrapped in layers of their own issues. Let's say someone tells you you're controlling. You can ask, is there some truth here? Have I been more directive than necessary? That's worth considering. But their intensity, their anger about it, that might be about their own issues with control, their fear of being controlled, their history with controlling people. When you understand projection, you can extract any genuine insight while releasing the rest. You think, perhaps I was a bit controlling in that meeting, I'll watch that and give others more space. But their rage suggests this touched something deeper in their own history. The practice of loving detachment. Not taking things personally doesn't mean not caring. It means caring without being controlled. It means loving without losing yourself. It means engaging fully while maintaining inner freedom. This is what I call loving detachment, the sweet spot between two extremes. On one side is being overly enmeshed, taking everything personally, needing everyone's approval, abandoning yourself to keep others happy. On the other side is being defended and shut down, not caring what anyone thinks, closing your heart to protect yourself. Loving detachment walks the middle path. It says, I care about you and our relationship. I'll listen to your feedback with an open mind and heart. I'll consider if there's truth in it that can help me grow. But I won't let your opinion determine my worth or dictate my choices. I remain committed to my own values and path even as I honor you. This requires what the Buddhists call strong back, soft front, the strength to stand your ground combined with the openness to be moved. You're not rigid, but you're not a leaf blown by every wind either. Part 3. Building inner stability and emotional strength. The foundation, self-knowledge. Inner stability begins with self-knowledge. The ancient Greek maxim "Know thyself" inscribed at the Temple of Delphi isn't just philosophical wisdom, it's practical psychology for emotional resilience. When you know yourself deeply, you're not easily shaken by others' opinions. You know your values, what matters most to you. You know your strengths, what you bring to the world. You know your growing edges. Where you're still learning. You've looked honestly at your shadow, the parts of yourself you're not proud of, and you've accepted them as part of your wholeness. This self-knowledge creates a kind of inner GPS. When someone criticizes you, you can quickly assess, is this accurate? Does it align with who I know myself to be? If yes, you adjust with gratitude for the feedback. If no, you release it without defensiveness or upset. Without self-knowledge, every opinion feels potentially true and threatening. Every criticism creates doubt. Every rejection suggests you might be fundamentally flawed. But when you know yourself, you have an internal reference point that steadies you through any external storm. Develop self-knowledge through reflection. Spend time with questions like, what do I truly value? What are my actual strengths? Where am I still growing? What patterns do I repeat? What are my triggers? The better you know yourself, the more stable you become. Building daily emotional resilience. Resilience isn't about never feeling hurt or never being affected. It's about recovering quickly, learning from challenges, and maintaining your center despite life's inevitable storms. Think of emotional resilience like physical fitness. You don't build it only when you need it, you build it through regular practice. You strengthen your emotional muscles daily so they're ready when challenges arise. Here are the non-negotiable daily practices that build lasting resilience. Mindfulness practice, even 10 minutes daily of sitting quietly, observing your breath and thoughts without judgment, builds the capacity to witness your emotions without being overwhelmed by them. You learn that you are not your thoughts or emotions, you are the awareness that observes them. Gratitude ritual, each evening, write down 3 specific things you're grateful for. This trains your brain to notice what's working, creating emotional balance and perspective. When you practice gratitude, you cannot simultaneously be in a state of resentment or victimhood. Physical foundation, regular exercise, adequate sleep, and nourishing food provide the biological foundation for emotional strength. You cannot sustain inner stability on a foundation of exhaustion, poor nutrition, and physical depletion. Your body and emotions are intimately connected.
Meaningful connection, deep relationships with people who truly see and accept you provide essential emotional anchoring.
These bonds remind you who you are when you forget.
Invest time and energy in cultivating these precious connections. Purpose beyond self, when your life has meaning beyond your personal concerns, when you're contributing to something larger than yourself, you develop perspective that makes you less vulnerable to petty offenses.
Purpose creates resilience. Developing internal validation.
Children need external validation, they're building their sense of self through mirroring from caregivers.
But adults who remain dependent on external validation never achieve true stability.
They're at the mercy of others' opinions, moods, and judgments.
Internal validation means you become your own source of approval, recognition, and worth. You notice your own efforts.
You acknowledge your own growth.
You appreciate your intentions even when outcomes disappoint.
This doesn't mean you ignore all feedback or become narcissistic.
It means feedback informs you but doesn't define you.
You consider it with genuine openness, extract what's useful, and release the rest.
Practice this daily, give yourself specific validation. I showed up today even though I was tired.
I spoke my truth even though it was uncomfortable. I tried something new even though it was scary. I was patient with myself when I made a mistake. Become your own cheerleader, your own supporter, your own source of acknowledgement.
Conclusion: transforming the way you respond to life. Mastering your emotional identity. Take a deep breath. We've traveled far together through these chapters.
Now, in this final section, let's integrate everything into a coherent approach to living with clarity, peace, and inner power.
Your emotional identity is the story you tell about who you are emotionally. I'm an angry person. I'm too sensitive. I can't control my temper. These stories become self-fulfilling prophecies. They limit what you believe is possible for you.
But here's the liberating truth: your emotional identity is not fixed. It's not determined by your genes, your childhood, or your history.
It's created by your repeated patterns of thought and behavior. And what's created can be recreated. You are not your past emotional patterns.
You are the awareness that can observe those patterns and consciously choose differently. This choice, this agency, is your greatest power.
Begin identifying as someone who is learning emotional mastery.
Not someone who has already mastered it, that creates pressure and perfectionism, but someone who is committed to the path of growth.
Say to yourself, I am someone who is learning to respond rather than react. I am someone who is growing in wisdom and calm.
I am someone who is becoming more free with each passing day.
Long-term calmness training. Calmness isn't a destination you reach and then you're done.
It's a practice you commit to daily, a muscle you strengthen through consistent exercise.
Here's your sustainable long-term training program.
Morning Foundation, 10 minutes. Begin each day with calm.
Breathe deeply for 5 minutes. Set intentions for how you want to show up.
Remind yourself of your values.
This morning practice sets your emotional baseline for the entire day. Midday reset, 2 minutes. Pause midday to check in.
Notice your emotional state without judgment.
Are you tense? Rushed? Irritated? Take 3 conscious breaths and reset. Don't let activation accumulate throughout the day.
Evening integration, 10 minutes before sleep. Review your day with compassion.
Where did you respond skillfully? Celebrate that. Where did you react automatically?
Note it without self-criticism.
What will you practice tomorrow? This reflection solidifies learning. Weekly review, 30 minutes. Each week, examine your patterns with curiosity. What triggers you most consistently? What techniques are most effective for you? What needs more practice?
Adjust your approach based on what you discover. Monthly deepening, 2 to 4 hours once monthly. Engage in deeper practice, extended meditation, reflective journaling, time in nature, meaningful conversation with someone you trust. These deeper practices replenish your reserves and provide perspective.
This training isn't about perfection. It's about consistency. Small daily practice compounds into profound transformation over months and years. Living with clarity, peace, and inner power. Clarity through presence. Clarity comes when you're fully present rather than lost in mental stories about past or future. Most confusion and emotional turbulence comes from mental time travel, ruminating about what happened or worrying anxiously about what might happen. The present moment, when you're fully in it, is almost always manageable. Even when it's uncomfortable, you can handle this moment. It's your thoughts about the moment, your judgments, your fears, your stories, that create unnecessary suffering. Practice bringing yourself back to now, again and again. Feel your breath. Notice sensations in your body. Hear sounds around you. This is the work of a lifetime, and it's the foundation of clarity. Peace through acceptance. Peace comes not from controlling life but from accepting what is while working skillfully with it. This is subtle but crucial. Acceptance doesn't mean resignation or passivity. It doesn't mean you stop working for positive change. It means you stop arguing with reality. You stop insisting things should be different than they actually are right now. Things are as they are in this moment. From this clear seeing, you can move wisely towards something better. But you can't move effectively while you're busy denying or resenting what is. Practice saying, "It is as it is." When disappointment comes, breathe and acknowledge, "It is as it is." This isn't defeat, it's clarity. From this acceptance, wise action becomes possible. Power through responsibility. Your greatest power lies in taking full responsibility for your emotional life. Not blame, responsibility. Blame looks backward and says, "It's their fault I feel this way." Responsibility looks forward and says, "Given this situation, what's my wisest response?" You didn't choose your childhood, your genetics, your early experiences. But you are choosing, right now, how you respond to what life brings. This responsibility is your power. When you blame others for your anger, you give away your power. You make them responsible for your emotional state, which means they control it. When you take responsibility, you reclaim your power. You become the author of your experience rather than its victim. Your path forward. Let me leave you with a simple daily commitment. Today, I choose awareness over reactivity. I choose breath over impulse. I choose perspective over immediate emotion. I choose wisdom over habitual patterns. When I forget, and I'll remember again with compassion for myself. This journey of transforming your relationship with anger is one of the most important undertakings of your life. It affects everything: your relationships, your health, your work, your peace of mind. You now have the knowledge, the techniques, and the mindset. What remains is practice, patient, consistent, compassionate practice. There will be days you forget everything. You'll explode, send a regrettable message, or rage at circumstances. This is part of the path. What matters is that you keep returning, keep practicing, keep choosing awareness. Over time, something remarkable happens. The space between trigger and reaction grows. You catch yourself earlier. You recover faster. You choose more wisely. And one day, you'll face something that once would have sent you into fury, and you'll notice you're calm. Not because you've suppressed anything, but because you've genuinely transformed. You've become someone who responds rather than reacts. Someone who's free. This freedom is yours. Claim it through daily practice. Breathe deeply. Stand in your power. Walk forward with clarity and peace.